I overheard my sister confessing her love for my fiancé, leaving me in a weird situation where I seriously now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my friends recently hosted a little party get-together for my sister since she had been gone for a while in Florida with her boyfriend, but was coming back up north after they broke up. It had some of our mutual friends, along with some of her old high school buddies and some cousins. My fiancé and I had gotten there a little bit late, but we were excited to join the celebration, and I was mostly happy to see my sister again since she has been pretty distant and rarely texted or called us. Nothing really happened other than some shots being poured and food being ordered until it was getting late and people started getting really drunk. Since wedding planning has been exhausting, my fiancé and I were going to leave early. Now, to sum up a really quick moment, I had been walking to the bathroom and past the bathroom where I heard my sister crying into somebody's arms. Originally, I was gonna go see if I could help her out or comfort her, but then I heard my fiancé's name and I paused. I definitely think I was the jerk for listening in, but I was curious and a bit drunk myself. But from what I gathered, she was sobbing about how seeing my fiancé made it all real again, and that she didn't want to deny her feelings anymore, especially now that he's getting married to me. What really stuck out to me was when she said that she just wanted him to notice her too. I left pretty quickly after that and haven't told anyone about what I heard. Maybe I never saw the signs, but she was always so polite and friendly with my fiancé. She knew him before anyone else since we were high school sweethearts, and I came out to her first when I was struggling with my identity. It is just such a strange thing to hear this from her, but part of me just wants to blame it on my drunk brain. She's never said anything like this before, and even greeted him when we got to the party, and they connected on a mutual interest for a bit, and she was so warm to me as well. I want to confront her to see if she meant it, but I'm also just so terrified of the result of all of it. My family has stayed drama-free, and I would hate to ruin everything now that my sister just got back from being away. I really need advice on how to proceed, and how to ask her about it without causing a scene. The party was a week ago, and I just feel sick whenever she messages me or calls to ask about wedding stuff or just chatting in general. So I know that I need to do something. Has anyone been in a situation like this before? Because right now I don't know what to do. Before we go any further, the original poster has an update that they would like to share. Here's what they had to say. First of all, I want to thank all the people that responded. I really didn't expect to get so much advice, and I probably would have still been panicking and bottling this up if you guys didn't help out. But unfortunately, it still went bad. But I'm glad I listened to you guys for all of it. Also, to clarify a few things I saw people get confused on in the comments. My fiancé is gay and I never doubted his loyalty, which is why I barely mentioned him in the original post. I was mostly concerned about my sister since we wanted her in the wedding party, so it was extra scary to hear she was crushing on my fiancé. Along with that, I know a lot of you said to just leave it be, but for the reason above, along with my personal beliefs, I really did not want to let it simmer. Anyways, I ended up talking with my fiancé the day after I made the post, once he got home from work and we were settled. I sort of just word vomited at him, but I tried to remember the advice that I had gotten. Well, he was equally disturbed, and probably a bit more since he has dealt with a similar situation at work once. We both definitely wanted to talk to her and just clear the air, and ended up making a little plan to meet her in a park. Originally, it was just gonna be me, but my fiancé wanted to stay nearby in the car. So yesterday, I texted her and we met up. Honestly, I'm still recovering from everything she said to me, so I won't repeat much of it here. The basic idea is that once we chatted for a bit, I brought it up gently that I had heard her at the reunion party, and I wanted to communicate with her about the things that she said. One thing I didn't feel the need to mention in the original post was that I'm also a transgender man, and it didn't matter to the issue, or at least I thought it didn't. However, once I asked my sister, she started on a whole tirade with a lot of right-wing talking points, mostly that she didn't get why my fiancé was settling for a confused girl rather than someone like her, and admitting that yes, she has feelings for him since she thinks he deserves better than me. I didn't say much to her, but once I realized what was going on, I just said that I was done and I left. I really don't know how she's changed so much since the girl I grew up with, because she used to be super supportive, which she even acknowledged, and said that she was just as lost as I am. After that, I was just a mess. My sister is living with my parents while she works to get a job in a new area, so she's also started telling them about the conversation. Both of my parents don't want to get involved, which I understand, and I tried texting her to tell her to stop bothering them, but she blocked me, so I guess that's that. My fiancé wants to cut her from the wedding as a whole, and I'm just leaning on him as a pillar right now. I wish this was a happier update, and at this point, I still seriously don't know what to do. Okay, first off, the way that your sister's treating you is so disrespectful. She seriously is trying to like throw you under the bus and be like, your fiancé deserves me instead of you. You're just a confused girl. You don't know what you want. And it's like, wait a second, what is going on right now? So truly, I think your fiancé has a good point, and I think it would be smart to possibly cut her from the wedding, especially if she's talking about you like that. that, because that's super toxic and you do not deserve that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I really want to go minimal contact with my mother, despite the fact that I still live with her at the moment, and at this point I'm honestly not sure what to do. Here's what happened. So I've lived with a very entitled and emotionally impulsive mother for most of my life, and I'm thinking about finally cutting contact once I move out. Today we got into it because I made a snide comment about our chips and dip being gone so quickly. I bought some for myself and only had maybe 2 bowls of chips and some dip, and was basically gaslit into thinking that I had eaten it all, even though I clearly remember not eating the dip to the point that it was even halfway gone. It's a ridiculous thing to get upset about, I know, but then she got super defensive and argumentative and berated me. I wasn't even that upset about it. What really upset me was her gaslighting me about it and berating me. That's when I walked away, and she, of course, came and knocked on my door about it, and I was boiling on the inside. I usually shut down during confrontation due to having autism and ADHD, so I didn't say much and I just shut the door. This isn't the first time that she's been overly demanding. About 2 weeks ago, I was struggling really bad mentally and was noticeably depressed. She asked me what was wrong, and I told her I didn't want to talk about it right now, but she just couldn't leave it at that. She was asking all these questions like, what are you depressed about? Tell me what's wrong. You could tell me what's wrong, you know, as well as, oh, you need to talk about it. Now, I appreciated her concern, but blatantly violating my boundaries like that almost sent me over the edge. If I say I don't want to talk about something, I mean it, and her just trying to pry information out of me, I felt was extremely disrespectful. There's many things that she's done in the past that have made me lose trust in her. One of the worst was when I broke my leg in the 3rd grade and I needed help getting out of the shower. So she was helping me and I was getting anxious and scared and telling her to hold on and don't let me fall or put my leg down or even slip because our tile floors were getting slippery. She then got mad and pulled me by the arm, and I fell and she left me on the bathroom floor by myself. I literally had to pull myself up and get dressed all on my own. Also, the countless times that she got a little too aggressive with physical discipline in the house. Now, don't get me wrong, I had emotional regulation issues and behavioral issues as a child, but when you raise a neurodivergent child, as a parent, you need to be the stable one, and she definitely wasn't, responding to my behavior with aggression, threats, and ultimatums. Not only that, but she's also verbally awful towards my father. If anything goes wrong in the house or something isn't done, he gets the brunt end of the blame and called lazy and selfish, even though he works 25 hours a week, while on disability, mind you, to support her while she's unemployed. Also, when my sister was struggling with depression in college and opening up about it and crying, she made it all about her. She would say, "There's nothing I can do about it. You're making me feel bad about it." So yeah, I've just about had it, and the only reason I still live at home is because of my disability and the fact that rent is extremely expensive. I can't stand living in a house where someone constantly snaps and rants about the tiniest things and thinks that she's entitled to sympathy because of her awful childhood. And when she doesn't get what she wants, you will get called cruel and selfish. I have great sympathy for the fact that she went through that, since I was mistreated by other family members too, but I would never try to think I'm owed anything because of it. It wasn't my fault that I was mistreated, and neither was it hers. But at this point, I'm absolutely done with all of this, and I seriously don't know what to do. Oh man, I totally understand that you don't want to rent someplace, but from the sounds of it, anything seems better than what you're dealing with right now. Like seriously, this lady sounds obnoxious and incredibly rude, and I don't blame you for being frustrated, like seriously. So hopefully this works out in some kind of way, because your mom sounds incredibly obnoxious, and I know if I was in your shoes, I would not want to deal with that in the slightest. Am I overreacting for ending things with a girl after seeing a Hinge notification on her phone while we were on a date? Because right now, I'm concerned that I might have made a mistake. Here's what happened. For a bit of context, I had been dating a new girl for about 3 months. We met on Bumble and lived about an hour apart, but texted every day and met up at least once a week for a date night. At around the 2-month mark, I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said it was too early and she didn't want to put labels on things, but we agreed then to be exclusive and not to see other people. Last Saturday, while we were at dinner, I saw what I thought was a Hinge notification pop up on her phone. It was only for a split second, so I kept it to myself so we didn't ruin our evening. I thought maybe I was mistaken, but my paranoia got the better of me, and the other day I finally downloaded Hinge to search for her profile, and sure enough, I found it. Yesterday, I sent her screenshots and I asked her to please explain. She then started saying that she deleted all of her apps, but she just forgot to deactivate the profile. But then when I mentioned I saw the notification while we were at dinner, she changed her story. She said that she only deleted Bumble but not Hinge, and claimed that she just had it on her phone but wasn't actively using it. When I asked why I saw the notification go off, she said it was probably just a promo or a new like, but she hadn't talked to anyone new since since our second date. After going back and forth, I told her I was having trouble believing her, and it felt like she was still looking around for a new guy. I would have 50 to 60-hour weeks, and have had experiences in the past with girls stringing me along until they find someone better. I told her I thought we should end things here, and then she just unloaded on me. She said that we shouldn't break up over a misunderstanding, that I was the nicest guy she had ever met, and that on Saturday she wanted to ask me to finally be a couple, but was too nervous to say it. Part of me wanted to believe her, but I felt like she was just saying what I wanted to hear since she had been caught. So seriously, am I overreacting for ending things so quickly over this? On one hand, I really have a hard time believing that she just had Hinge on her phone passively while wanting to be a couple like she claimed. It's a big 180 degrees to go from not wanting to put a label on things to me being her dream guy. I know that she had feelings for me, but I feel like she was still looking around to see what else was out there. I've had similar issues with exes in the past and don't want to relive the experience. On the other hand, what we had was good, and I really enjoyed being with her. In hindsight, we were early in our relationship, and maybe she was being sincere with what she said. Maybe I did rush and end things a little too quickly, and we could have just talked it out. What should I do? Okay, honestly, I can kind of see both sides of this, but at the end of the day, I do understand why you did that, because having that kind of past experience of being strung along and feeling like you're not a priority absolutely can hit you like a ton of bricks. Because one day you're madly in love with this girl, but the next day she's suddenly like, oh, I don't like you anymore, see ya. And that is jarring, and I hope nobody goes through that. So no, I don't think you overreacted, because it really does seem like she was looking around for somebody else instead of trying to build a relationship with you. Am I the jerk for yelling at my mom for eating peanut butter in her own house, despite the fact that she knows my daughter is incredibly allergic to peanuts? Because right now, after I freaked out on her and chewed her out, I feel that I may have overreacted, and at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so my daughter was diagnosed with peanut allergies a year ago. For reference, she's 2.5 years old. She became almost unconscious, vomiting, and landed us in the ER. It was terrifying to see my baby go through that. It's also important to note that I love my mom so much. We're really close, and she loves my daughter like crazy. Ever since the diagnosis, everyone in my family has been in agreement to not eat those nuts around her. It seems so obvious and easy to my brothers and my dad, but my mom keeps making what I think are dumb decisions. When we go on vacation, she will go out of her way to bring big bags of nuts and nut candy with her. She brought a little bag of pistachios when she stayed at my house one time and started shelling and eating them in my living room after my daughter went to sleep. She bought peanut M&Ms to eat on a plane ride we all took together. On these occasions, I kept my cool as I asked her not to do these things and pointed out the ridiculousness of her having to eat the one thing that my daughter is allergic to. Well, we've been staying over at her house for the past few days, and this morning my mom was eating a sandwich. My daughter then went over and asked for a bite, and my mom said, "Sorry, sweetie, you can't have this, it's peanut butter." And at this point, I kinda lost my mind. I calmly asked her why she was eating peanut butter, and she said, "I don't know," as she dumped it in the garbage. And it's there that I kinda lost it. I got very emotional and raised my voice, which is something I never do. And I chewed her out for always eating nuts around my daughter, even though she knows that she's allergic to it. And despite the fact that I've asked her not to multiple times. I told her I want to trust her so badly to watch my daughter without me there, but I just simply don't. I can't now. And then I cried and stormed out of the room. Anyways, am I the jerk for yelling at my mom in her own house over this? Because right now I seriously don't know what to do. No, you're not the jerk at all. This really is unsettling, and I seriously can't believe your mom's acting like that. Because from my point of view, it doesn't seem like she's taking any of this seriously. And it seems like she's doing this almost like pointedly around your daughter. And that is seriously messed up if that's actually what's going on right now. Here you have a kid who literally will go to the emergency room and possibly pass away from that, and your mom's just sitting there being like, "Oh man, suddenly this is my favorite snack." It's like, dude, what are you doing? You are seriously being so careless about something that is so dangerous right now. So no, you're not the jerk in the slightest. I would be very pissed off if I was in your shoes, because she is literally not taking any of this seriously, and that is so unfair for your daughter. Am I the jerk for deciding not to invite my husband's family to my kid's birthday party after they literally called her a mistake? Because right now I'm really pissed off and I don't know if I'm overreacting. Here's what happened. Okay, so me and my husband have been together for 5 years. We had our daughter pretty early on, and yeah, she wasn't planned, but we were happy and I have no regrets at all. His family, well, not so much. They've always been kind of cold towards me, and honestly, I've noticed that they don't treat our daughter the same as our other grandkids. Last weekend, we were at his mom's house for a late dinner, and she and my father-in-law were talking about my husband as a teenager. My mother-in-law then proceeded to joke in front of my daughter, saying how he used to be so carefree and go with the flow before he had to settle down so fast. Then she added on by saying, "I bet he wished that he had more time before jumping into the dad life with an oopsie baby." And when she said this, I was pissed. We ended up leaving soon after that since it was getting late anyways, and that night as I tucked my daughter into bed, she asked me what an oopsie baby was. I felt heartbroken for her and basically explained that sometimes people have kids by accident, but that didn't make her any less special. After I put her to bed, I ranted to my husband, saying that I don't want his mother-in-law around our daughter if she's going to be saying stuff like that. The last thing I want is for my baby girl to be questioning whether or not she's wanted. I then said that I don't want my family-in-law at her 5th birthday party next month, and I won't be sending them an invite until they apologize for making things awkward. My husband says I'm overreacting over a small comment, and I need to relax and not make this a thing. He argued, saying that I shouldn't overreact at a comment that she made when she was tired. He told me I'm not allowed to uninvite his family, especially over this. So am I overreacting? Should I just suck it up and let them come to the party and risk my daughter hearing more harmful things? I'm honestly really upset, but I feel like I'm the only person who's mad, so at this point, I really don't know what to do. No, I don't think you're overreacting at all. This is completely reasonable in my opinion. They literally called your daughter a mistake. They said, "Oh, this is one of those accidents that didn't mean to happen." And worst of all, they said it in front of her. Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so messed up. You can't do that to a kid. Just because you accidentally got pregnant doesn't mean that you don't love your daughter and that you're not happy that she's around. Like, my God, what kind of monster would say something like that in front of the kid? So no, I don't think you're the jerk for not inviting those people, because seriously, what they said was completely messed up. My friend almost gets fired after I deny a report she made to HR about my manager, causing her to be very angry and making me question if I'm the jerk or not. Because right now, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 24-year-old male, and I work at a corporate company working from 9 to 5. I just graduated college last year and started this job 2 weeks after graduating around June. It's an internship at a solid company that's going to help me get better jobs and opportunities later on. In the beginning, everything was going great, and I made several friends, including someone who we will call Chelsea. Chelsea is a 26-year-old female, and she has been my friend since the beginning, and we share everything with each other and often go out for coffee and lunch. Just as a side note, nothing romantic or anything intimate has happened between us at all. It is strictly a platonic relationship. The problem started in November when I got transitioned to a different department under a manager who we will call Ryan. Ryan is a 43-year-old male and definitely has a narcissistic personality and loves getting his ego fed. And this is pretty well known throughout the office. Ryan loves ragging on the new guy. And since I've been the new guy since November, I've been the one who's getting the brunt end of it. Now, I have pretty thick skin, so I don't get bothered by it easily, but Ryan has noticed this and started really cracking down and started embarrassing me in meetings and giving me busy work so that I have less time to do the real work. And after 6 weeks of dealing with Ryan, I started looking for new jobs around December. After a long process of job hunting, I got an incredible offer in the beginning of March, but the problem is that my new job doesn't start until June. Obviously, I need to pay the bills, so I'm stuck working with Ryan for another 2 months. Since my current job only requires me to give 2 weeks professional notice, I decided I'm not going to inform them until the end of May, which is right at the 2-week mark. Until then, I'm just playing nice and making sure no issues happen so that Ryan doesn't try to sabotage my new job. Okay, so getting back to Chelsea. Chelsea doesn't work directly under Ryan, but works in an adjacent department, so she knows Ryan pretty well. Chelsea is also the only one who knows about my new job. Chelsea has been pressuring me to go to HR about Ryan's behavior, but I've told her that I don't want any problems and that I'm not going to go to HR. I just want the next 2 months to go by smoothly and get out of here. Well, the other day, Chelsea and I were hanging out in her office, and Ryan suddenly comes in. Now, for the purpose of being anonymous, I'm not going to say what happened next. However, Ryan did something to me that was definitely a fireable offense. After that happened, Chelsea told me I have to report Ryan, but I said no, and then I just left. Well, it turns out that Chelsea took it upon herself to go to HR directly. HR called me into their office and asked me for my side of the story, and you know what? I straight up lied. I told them nothing actually happened. So HR dropped the issues, but word got around and Ryan found out about it. And now he's trying to go after Chelsea and get her fired for being a liar. And now Chelsea is mad at me and won't talk to me, and she's blaming me for her almost getting fired. But it's my prerogative whether or not I decide to report it. I understand that she thinks that me letting it slide means that it will affect other people too, but to be completely honest, I'm looking out for me and what's best for my future. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Okay, the original poster is absolutely the jerk. You mean to tell me that you had a manager who was actively mistreating people in the office and who mistreated you in front of another person, and you don't have the guts or the spine to report it and get that guy in trouble? Like, are you kidding me right now? That is so stupid, because the way he's treating you, especially the part that you left out of the story, all of that is completely inappropriate, and it really leaves a bad precedent for that place. It doesn't matter if you're leaving or not. That guy deserves to be reported. Also, I'm pretty sure it's illegal for that guy to try and like sabotage your next job or like get you fired or in trouble or something like that. Because at least from my experience, once you report someone like this and they try to like hurt your career, that can be seen as retaliation and then you can sue them into oblivion. So to that regard, you absolutely suck for not speaking up, especially when you had every opportunity to do so. But also the fact that you threw Chelsea under the bus. You literally called her a liar and got her in trouble, and then seriously put a target on her back with Ryan staring right at her. Like, that makes you an awful person. And I really mean that. Like, that really is so messed up. So sure, you can sit there and try to be like, well, I'm looking out for myself. But at the end of the day, you ruined the one good friendship you had at that office. And the fact that you did that, in my opinion, proves that you absolutely are the jerk. An entitled Karen demands to take my hotel reservation that I scheduled nearly 2 months in advance. But after refusing to give in to her weird demands, she goes crazy, resulting in her slapping a cop that showed up to try and resolve the issue. And I've honestly never been more blown away by an incident in my life. Here's what happened. A few years ago, I worked a job that required me to travel a lot. From Monday night through Thursday night, I pretty much lived in a hotel room, and I did this job for 10 years. Because my destinations were nearly always in the same cities, with my meetings at nearly all the same locations, I stayed at the same motels. The company I worked for paid for the hotels and expenses. They also had no issues with me joining rewards programs with the various hotel chains that I would frequently stay at. After a time, several of the hotels knew me by name, and one hotel in particular had a room specifically designated as my room, since I practically live there. With another chain, I had more than made diamond status on their rewards program and had over 750,000 points. So when I would call and reserve a room, they would automatically upgrade me to the presidential suite if they had any available, or even a master suite if the presidential was not available. So one Monday afternoon, I arrived at my hotel destination with my reservation information in hand, just in case I got a new person at the desk. As I entered the lobby with my luggage in hand, a couple was at the desk, and there seemed to be some kind of issue. The desk person, which was the manager, was trying to explain to this couple that the hotel was filled. The man was saying that he called to check on the rooms earlier that day, and this is for the event going on in the city, and had been told that there were rooms still available. There was an event in that city that week, and all the hotel rooms were full. I knew about the event in advance and had made a reservation 2 months in advance, and this is because I knew I was going to be there at the same time as the event. The woman in this couple had become unhinged before I had arrived. The woman was shouting obscenities and making claims that this was racism. The man kept asking to speak with the manager, which he was literally speaking with right now. The guy was frustrated and upset, but he was also trying to keep his cool and calm his nearly rabid female companion down. It was really embarrassing to stand there and watch this go on. After about 15 minutes or so, they reluctantly gave up and decided to leave. As they stormed past me, the man says to me, "Give it up, man. There aren't any rooms here." I go up to the front desk, and the front desk manager greets me and says that my room is ready for me. Well, the couple that were leaving hear this, and I only thought that the woman had been loud the first time. This woman came flying back to the front desk, demanding to know why I had been given a room and they had been turned away. And now I was suddenly the target of this angry Karen. I tried explaining that I had a reservation, but that didn't seem to matter. I, along with the front desk manager, were being called all manner of obscenities and being accused of all kinds of crimes. The woman, without warning, suddenly turns at me and tries to kick me, but thankfully she only managed to kick my suitcase. Her male companion came over and is trying to get her to calm down, and he is now apologizing for her, but she keeps on and on. This goes on for maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the police arrived. The manager has sounded a silent alarm because she felt endangered. Having a big citywide event, the police were traveling in pairs, so there were 2 of them that arrived. The police managed to get the woman somewhat calmed down and start taking statements. The woman keeps demanding that I be arrested for stealing their hotel room. My statement was simply easy. I told them I was here on business and that I have a copy of my reservation that I made 2 months earlier, while also explaining that I don't want to press charges for attempted assault. After the police take everyone's statements, they tell the couple they have to leave or they will be arrested. The man seemed a little bit upset, but his female companion, the Karen of this story, absolutely exploded. And trust me, I'm not going to go into detail on what she said here. Her male companion was now telling her to just just shut up and go. But no, she wanted her hotel room that she was entitled to. And those were the actual words that she said. But it didn't end well for her, because suddenly she slapped a cop. What happened next happened so fast it was incredible. The cop she slapped spun around, put her in cuffs, and hauled her out to the car. It took all of maybe 45 seconds. At the same time, the other cop turned on her companion. This guy immediately threw his hands up in the air and said to the cop, "Look man, I'm not with her." The guy then kept apologizing for her behavior as he left. Eventually, the cops finished up and they left as well. I could see the woman in the back of the car crying and saying something to the cops as they left. Fast forward and the rest of the week was pretty much uneventful, but I think that's pretty understandable when compared to this entitled Karen straight up slapping a cop. Wow, talk about blowing things out of proportion. If they don't have rooms at the hotel, they just don't have them. They're not going to magically open, and you don't then have the right to try and kick someone else out of their room, all because you want to try and be weird and take it from them simply because they have a room. Like, the original poster didn't do anything wrong. They didn't steal anything from this entitled Karen. They didn't even know who this person was, but she was instead freaking out and claiming that they were being racist, while also saying that all these crimes were going to come against them. Like, seriously, this entitled Karen was completely out of line. So good for the original poster and the manager for calling the cops. There was literally no consoling this entitled Karen, and she was absolutely going to slap someone eventually. And unfortunately, she chose wrong, deciding that she was going to slap a cop and spend some time in jail. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My wife is convinced I cheated on her after she found a mysterious tank top in our house, and now I'm left trying to defend myself against something that didn't happen. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. So to start things out, this all happened within the last hour. After dropping the kids off at daycare like I usually do, I came down to my home office to start working. My wife had been going through a basket of unfolded laundry looking for some clothes for the day and found a kind of crop top or tank top thing in the laundry. She came into my office to ask me where it came from. At first, I just kind of shrugged and said I wasn't really sure, but soon realized that this had triggered a firestorm of fears that I had someone over to the house and was cheating. I tried to assure her that I was not, but I realized I had no way to prove that I wasn't. We have had several people stay over at the house over the last several months. Her sister's family, my mom and nephew, another married couple, but this was a smaller top that likely would not have fit any of them. When I realized this was a bigger issue, I kind of started to panic that I had no way to prove I didn't do anything wrong. But that must not have looked very good either. To top it all off, she said she found a piece of chipped nail polish on the center console of my car right by the shifter recently, but she hasn't had nail polish in several months either. However, my car has been pretty dirty for a while because of having small children and being too busy to clean it out. I think it could have been her old nail polish or even some other kind of debris. Now, for some backstory, before we were together, she was with a couple of guys that cheated on her and generally did not treat her very well. So she tends not to believe someone that says they aren't cheating if she suspects that they are. We have been together for 9 years and married for 7. To be clear, I absolutely did not cheat. I have never cheated on anyone, but I have no plausible explanation for either of these items, and I feel like I'm guilty until proven innocent. She said she would rather know the truth and has given a 24-hour window for me to come clean if I cheated, but I didn't, and there is truly nothing to come clean about. I worry that this will forever live in the back of her mind, and that she will never trust me again. How can we possibly fix this situation? What should I do? This is a really messy situation, because it really does sound like the original poster did not cheat, but the wife is absolutely convinced that yes, something had to happen, and you clearly are going behind her back and doing something. But you're not. You literally don't even know where that tank top came from. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would be panicking as well. That is a completely normal response to this situation. I mean, really, you can't force your wife to trust you, unfortunately. It sounds like she's been ruined by past partners, and that has completely made her freak out if she sees anything happening that might be even a little bit sketchy, or if it's something that could be assumed to be a little sketchy. I mean, she has been cheated on, and that has clearly messed up her head when it comes to relationships. So first of all, maybe it's time to pump the brakes and try and figure out whose tank top that really is. If someone can lay claim to it, or at least say, oh wait, that was mine, I left it at your house, or something like that, that might be able to fix this to some degree. RV. Because seriously, her giving you a 24-hour window to come clean, or else this is going to cause problems or something like that honestly is really ridiculous. Yes, she has been hurt in the past, but she is jumping to massive conclusions and giving ultimatums that are only going to be damaging. And that's not fair because you have not done anything wrong. So hopefully some steps can be made while you try and track down who owns the crop top. Give her your phone and access to all of your electronics. Show her straight up that no, you are not hiding anything. I mean, if it really is the case that you haven't cheated, then there really should be no problem for her to go through your messages or your emails. You quite literally have nothing to hide, and you've only been faithful to your wife. Because it really does seem like the last thing you would ever want to do is cheat on her. Because based on her history, that would be an awful thing for anyone to do. My entitled Karen of an aunt throws a fit over the smallest things possible, blaming everybody but herself for losing her things and causing all of us turmoil in the process. Here's what happened. So to start things out, I recently went on a camping trip with some of my family. I spent most of the week doing laundry and sorting my art supplies so that I had all that I wanted for the trip packed and ready to go. By the time the day we left arrived, I had all my things ready in the family RV. But my aunt, on the other hand, did not have everything ready to go. In fact, she spent the last night before the trip stuffing her things into her duffel bag and packed everything into the RV on the morning that we left. So anyways, we were bringing one of our 3 dogs with us. This dog is fairly big, but not very hard to control, as long as you're keeping an eye on him. My aunt got a leash that connects to a belt thing that goes around your waist, so you don't have to hold it all the time. And since getting it, she refuses to walk this particular dog without it, despite the fact that, as I mentioned before, a normal leash works just fine, since he's really not that hard to control. Now, as everyone was getting ready to go and packing the final few things, who would suddenly appear with an angry look on her face? That's right, my aunt, who is a Karen. She suddenly began to shout about how she couldn't find the belt part of the fancy leash that she got for the dog and made everyone start looking for it. Of course, she was throwing a tantrum, and I kid you not, she was crying and stomping her feet, yelling about how all the things she pays for are the things that other people lose, and started blaming everyone for misplacing it. At some point, she started refusing to go on the trip with us, saying that she wasn't going to leave home without it. Also, keep in mind now that this woman is about 32 to 33 years old, throwing a fit about a dog leash. We have plenty of other dog leashes that would have worked just fine in the past, and yet she insists on finding this particular one. Eventually, someone finally convinces her to get in the RV so we can finally leave, and she continues her tantrum in the back until we reach the first stop on the trip. While there, she takes the dog out to go to the bathroom on the normal leash with no problem, but continues to whine about how she doesn't have the other leash. It eventually got to the point where my grandfather just snapped and said that he'd find a pet store in the next city that we passed through. And well, to fast forward, we did just that. We stopped by a pet store getting another one of those stupid leashes for the dog just to finally shut up my stupid aunt. Yeah, that sounds really annoying. I know that type of person 100%. What should be a good example in front of family and friends is instead a 30-something-year-old who's throwing a fit and acting like a teenager. Like, these type of people just don't grow up. They never change, and they're the same person they were several years ago, only now they have a mortgage. Like, seriously, come on, it's just a leash. It's not like you couldn't walk the dog with a normal leash and do what you need to do just fine. Instead, you decided to throw a fit and put everybody off about the vacation they're gonna have to deal with. The original poster went on to say that she found it in her room when they got back. So literally, all of this was just a complete waste. She made a big fuss out of nothing and treated everybody like garbage, all because she misplaced it. And honestly, that would really make me second guess ever even considering going on a vacation with them ever again. Am I the jerk for reporting a good friend for animal neglect after she let her horse stand out in the snow for several months without building any kind of barn or place for it to stay? Here's what happened. Honestly, this has been bothering me for years now, and I really need to figure out where I stand with all of this. To start things out, I grew up in a small farming community. I had a good friend who lived a short drive from my family's farm. Her parents were not farmers, but they had bought property in the countryside, and her father told her that he would buy her a horse on her 16th birthday. The house she lived in had a corral with a lean-to and a trough, which is basically an exercise ring for horses. She was extremely excited about the upcoming purchase of her horse, and I, being raised in a dairy, asked her in front of her father about when they would be building a barn and a pasture fence for the horse. She laughed at me, and her father took great pride in telling me that all that could wait. She got her horse the following spring. It was a 16-hand, gray and white paint named Money. I helped her feed and water him, but it took 3 months for her father to get a saddle. Once he finally did, I had to show her how to saddle him and halter him, and she went riding exactly once. Money the horse refused to even walk. All he wanted to do was graze. He had a bit in his mouth because he was locked into a dirt corral for months. My friend didn't know how to ride or sit the saddle. She never rode him again, and Money just stood in the corral. That winter was extremely harsh, which is common in the north. I went to her house and it was negative 26 degrees Celsius, and the 15-minute drive took 45 minutes in the backcountry lanes. When I got there, I saw Money standing in the corral, as far into the lean-to he could possibly get. He had ice in his mane and tail, and ice and snow all over his withers and back. He didn't even have a blanket or straw to lie down in, and no way to get out of the wind. He was standing there with his head and neck down, covered in snow. I cried all the way home, and as soon as I walked in, I made a call to RSPCA. And for context, the RSPCA stands for Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. I told them her address, her parents' names, and the conditions and food that Money the horse was dealing with. The next day, my friend called me, screaming and threatening me. The RSPCA had visited her house and threatened her parents with livestock neglect and animal cruelty if they didn't immediately transport Money into a heated barn for boarding. They said he was underweight, undergroomed, and endangered. It was going to cost her parents thousands to board him. It probably would have been cheaper to build a reasonable shelter and a pasture fence, honestly. But when she was on the phone screaming and threatening me, I lied. I told her I had no idea who would do such a thing. She wanted to fight me, but I only wanted her horse to survive the winter. I wasn't jealous of her. I didn't do it to make her and her family look bad. I did it because they were going to let that horse pass away. She told everyone that I had grassed her and that I was a liar. Money was immediately transported to a heated boarding facility and then sold before the spring. So in the end, yes, I reported her and then I lied. But I honestly need to know, am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk. You literally saved that horse's life. This former friend is one of those people that buys a puppy in December and then wants nothing to do with it once April rolls around. They take advantage of another life, such as a horse or some kind of animal, just to make themselves look good. But once the novelty of it all just kind of rubs off and they realize they have a lot of work to do to try and keep this animal alive, they end up getting rid of it or worse, neglecting it. I mean, that horse was standing out in negative 26 degrees Celsius. That is incredibly cold and unbelievably cruel. So no, you are not the jerk. Your friend is crazy for letting that happen. Her father is even worse for saying, no, we're not going to build anything. You did the right thing by calling that company and explaining exactly what was going on. Because if you had not done that, there's a very high likelihood that that horse would not have survived. And by you stepping up, you not only exposed them for the awful people they are, but you also saved a life. My wife is telling me to stop drinking entirely so I don't end up like her dad. And at this point, I'm wondering if this is a reasonable request, and I seriously don't know what to do. We've been married for 8 months now after dating for 3 years. Something like 2 years ago or so, her dad, who is in his 50s, was diagnosed with non-alcoholic cirrhosis and was given a few years to live. And it was pretty bad. It made him mean and snappy, which he normally isn't. For the entire year he was on the transplant list. We weren't even sure he was going to live long enough to make it to our wedding. My wife was never a huge drinker, but she stopped drinking almost completely during this whole ordeal. And understandably so. I always find myself defending her whenever people poke fun at her for getting a soda or some juice when everyone else is getting drinks. However, she also asked me to cut down on drinking. I didn't really want to, but I didn't have a good argument for why I shouldn't. Would that mean that I'm an alcoholic too? So I just went with it. I used to drink more like 7 to 10 drinks a week, and our hard limit for me has been no more than 4 ever since then. That is, until recently. Her dad was given the transplant on the condition that he attend AA meetings, which he has done in the past, as well as not drink. As far as I understand, he's not supposed to drink at all. Her family is currently on a trip in Europe for a few weeks, and my wife apparently heard that he had been drinking a bunch during said trip. So yesterday, she told me that our household is pretty much going to go dry now. She wants to get rid of our home bar, and we won't be spending money on alcohol for the most part anymore. Now, the home bar was my idea, so we can host people instead of going out to bars. beers. It's far cheaper that way. Honestly, the hardest part about this is that I've been very much into home brewing for a while now. I really love craft beer. I don't drink to get drunk. I drink to appreciate a well-made beer. And of course, I love to drink my own beers. She's telling me that I would be able to have one beer every once in a while, maybe every other week or on a special occasion, like when we're having people over or something like that. For the record, her dad used to drink a lot, and he's the type where he would be buying cases of light macro beer and would then start to binge drink. So even though his cirrhosis was not alcohol in nature and runs in the family according to the doctors, I'm more than certain that all that beer wasn't helping. Honestly, I don't really want to cut it out entirely, but I feel like that's what an alcoholic would say. I already didn't want to cut it down to 4 a week, but I did it just for her. If push comes to shove, I would do this for her too, just like how I would give up computer gaming if I had to, which has been a point of contention in the past. Is she being reasonable in this situation? I mean, after all, it is understandable to want to cut out booze given what's going on with her dad. I feel like there is literally no way I can say no to this, because if I do, I'm gonna come off as a stubborn jerk, just like both of our dads. Now, for context, I'm aware that I'm overweight at 250 pounds. I have a sedentary job as a software engineer, and I know I can do better with my own health, and I do want to. I have successfully lost weight in the past via calorie counting, but I just haven't been careful about it for the past 2 years or so, and have lost that progress. But honestly, with all things considered when it comes to drinking, as well as my own personal health, is this the right play? What should I do? Honestly, after seeing so many people who are addicted to alcohol and have their own problems with trying to quit this entirely, I don't blame your wife for saying, okay, we need to stop this entirely. She is clearly afraid that this could happen to her husband, the person that she loves so very much, and she really doesn't want this to happen to you as well. It might come off as controlling, and it might not be what you want right now, but I think if you see things from her perspective, you might understand that she's probably really afraid right now, and she really doesn't want anything to happen to you. I think there is some kind of middle ground that can be explored later on, but right now, with all the things going on with her dad, I think if I was in your shoes, I would be biding my time and picking my battle correctly, because this is clearly a sensitive issue, and I think you just need to be careful regardless of what you do. My entitled landlord mocks the fact that my mom just passed away, claiming that she doesn't care that my mom died and that I still need to pay my rent on time. So after she said that, I saw red and decided to get revenge, and effectively over the next few months took apart her real estate business, forcing her and her stupid son to file for bankruptcy. And I've never seen someone more deserving of this fate in my life. Here's what happened. So my now ex-wife and I moved into an apartment in 2010. The house as a whole was a renovated townhouse split between 2 sides, with 2 apartments upstairs. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of the apartment, as it was a much older building than I had ever lived in, but I quickly adjusted to the wood creaking throughout the night. On the initial walkthrough, we noticed that the only problem was that there was a dip in the bathroom ceiling. The landlord, by the name of Jay, that's not their real name, promised us that he would fix it as soon as possible. Well, 1 year to the day that we moved in there, we heard a loud crash at 4 in the morning. The bathroom ceiling had collapsed, and there was tiling and wood all over the floor and in the bathtub. Now, my wife at the time was typically the aggressive one, while I was more passive and laid back, and she kept calling Jay throughout the day. When she got in touch with him at around 9 o'clock at night, she explained what happened and insisted that it be fixed immediately. But Jay rebuffed, yelling that his girlfriend was a lawyer and that he didn't need to do anything. Now, this is honestly where I got mad. I went outside to have a cigarette and to call him myself. I feigned a relaxed demeanor, and at first he began trying to talk to me as if I was his bro, and kept saying stuff like, dude, I'm gonna get someone out there and it's gonna take like a few weeks. When he couldn't sway me that way, he began yelling about his girlfriend and how she knew the law. But what he was unaware of is that I had read the tenant laws in my state, and so, as he tried to lie, I waited until he finished, and then I recited the law, stating that if an apartment was considered uninhabitable, then the landlord needed to pay for the tenant to stay in a place until it was completely resolved, meaning that he would have to pay for us to stay in a hotel, of our choosing by the way, every single night until the ceiling was fixed. He then tried to say that our upstairs neighbor was the supervisor, but he wasn't sure if he could get him down there that night. He placed me on hold, then came back a few minutes later and said that my upstairs neighbor by the name of Phil was out of state with his girlfriend, but I didn't believe him for a second, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I rang Phil's doorbell, call and asked him with Jay on the speakerphone if he was assigned as the supervisor. He just laughed and said no. Dejected, Jay said he would have people out there the next day, even though previously he said it would be for at least 3 weeks. There's a lot more to this incident, but it led me to 2 very specific conclusions. For one, if you're going to lie, then there has to be a consistency in your lie, and make sure that the people you lie to don't communicate with each other. And secondly, this is where a feud started between me and my wife versus him and his mother. She was the original landlord and gave the house to him so he could begin to make a side profit. Fast forward to a year later, and Jay stopped coming to the house, and his mom began doing the pickups. Around this time, my ex and I had been laid off, and we were working with Social Security for food, health, and housing insurance. We were approved for all 3 in April, but we would not get the check until May. When our typical check wasn't in the landlord's mailbox, he immediately gave a summons saying that he was taking us to court for conviction. The day we went to court, he had no lawyer, and we were still all going before the judge. The judge asked, "Does the defense have a means to pay within 90 days of non-payment?" We said to them, "Yes, Your Honor." We then handed over paperwork showing that he will be reimbursed for April and May. The judge says, "I see no problem. They are breaking no laws. Why are we even here?" Jay then says, "Well, Your Honor, they've been bullying me." The judge interrupted him and said, "I don't care. Unless they are breaking a law, then this case is dismissed." Well, suffice it to say, Jay and his mother were not happy. Around this time in my life, things were tumultuous. My mother, who had been battling lung cancer for 4.5 years, finally succumbed to it in June. This happened at roughly the same time his mom came knocking, looking for payment. I explained that I would leave the check in the mailbox when we got back from the funeral home, and to please just respect my right to mourn. She took her fingers and began rubbing them together, pretending to play the world's smallest violin. I will never forget what she said next. "Oh, my mommy just died. Woe is me. She probably had it coming. I don't care if your entire family's dead. I want my money." She then smiled smugly, proud with what she had just said. At that point, I saw red, and my heart jumped into my throat. I went, grabbed the check, and handed it to her in absolute shock that anyone would say something so messed up. She had finally managed to push a button that very few people I've known throughout my life have even come close to pressing. I went into rage mode, but not in the way that you would expect. And this is where my revenge started to take place. We were always told that if a health inspector came by to not open the door. Well, I waited until August, since that was the month before the lease was going to run out, and we knew they would not be extending a renewal. I walked up the block to town hall to ask for the health inspection of our property, and it was scheduled for a few days later. Now, there are a few things that you need to know about this situation. For starters, I was friends with all of the tenants. Phil had moved out with his fiancé, but the new tenant was a really cool girl around my age by the name of Danny. Tom and Hannah on the other side of the downstairs floor had moved out in July, and Jay was still looking to fill it. The only one who wanted to stay out of this was Rose on the upper right apartment. Secondly, I had gotten permission, as well as her spare key, so I could let the inspector in Danny's apartment, and I knew that I could use the back staircase on the right side to let him into Tom's now vacant apartment. And third, I also knew that Danny was moving out in September, which is a month after we would move out. The inspector came and it was glorious. He checked the exterior of the house first, noting that wires were exposed. There was an old empty dryer, along with other odd clutter in the backyard. I brought him inside the shared entrance, and as I was coming in, he noticed that the last inspected date was back in 1994, which was a little under 20 years to the day that this happened. This meant that for each year he did not have an inspection, there would be an appropriate fine. For our apartment, we had black mold growing in our bathroom, and the bubble in the ceiling had begun to regrow to problematic proportions. Upstairs, Danny's apartment was suffering from leaks in the ceiling, and it looked like her bathroom ceiling was also on the brink of collapsing. We then went to the basement. The boiler was on the verge of exploding. There was flammable items along with gasoline and a pack of matches sitting right beside it. The fire door that separated the two sides did not close all the way, basically rendering it pointless and useless. And on the right side of the basement, there was a toilet that had blown up. It had coated the surrounding walls, and the leakage prevented us from going up to the floor via the right side. And by the way, the entire time, the inspector was photographing and writing constantly. We stepped outside, and he said that he needed to come back. When I asked why, he said he had to run out of the space to write down all of the infractions. He had literally filled the front and had written an entire page on the back portion. I kindly and coyly said, "Well, how much will it cost right now?" He scratched his head and said, "Well, it's probably going to be around $20,000 to $30,000 from what I can see, but it's probably going to be higher as this house was never licensed to be split into apartments." I thanked him for his time, and he said he was going to come back with a county inspector. So eventually we moved out at the end of August, but I got an update from Rose, who did stay behind in the apartment complex. Because he was the current owner, he owed all current fines, and nobody new could move into the empty apartments until everything was up to code. Basically, with 3 out of the 4 being vacant, he was losing thousands of dollars in potential rent. He handed the property back to his mother and had to file for bankruptcy. Now here's the other thing that makes this even more interesting. Every time an old tenant left and a new one was coming in, an inspection was supposed to be done. And now that all the financial burden had fell on her, they looked into the records and she was fined for each time she had broken the rule. By the end of the year, Rose had moved out, so the place was hemorrhaging money. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting back, proud of what I had done. Now, maybe you're asking, is this all you did? Well, no, it wasn't even close to being done yet. I felt like I had completely destroyed Jay, but my real target had always been his mom. I learned that she had 8 properties throughout 3 towns in my county. I went to each one, spoke to the tenants, and said that I was a concerned tenant from another property and asked if they had any problems with their apartments. Every single person I asked described the apartment in very poor condition and it had intolerable levels, and that the mom was effectively a slumlord. She would ignore problems unless someone turned to litigations. She was threatened that they would summon the inspector, or more often than not, the people would just straight up move out. She would refuse their deposit and sink those into cosmetic repairs so that the apartment looked nicely furnished. People rarely fought back because she knew that the occupants were of upper-lower class minorities. So being the concerned person I was, I went to the inspector of the other 2 towns and asked for an inspection to be done with at least 1 tenant, if not more, and we would be waiting for when they came back. It turns out that she faced pretty much the same infractions on every apartment she owned, and it turned out she actually had 12 apartments, but I initially only knew about the ones that fell within my county. The remaining properties in the next county over were given a mysterious heads up to perform a surprise inspection. From what I can tell, Jay's mom had been in the landlord business for about 40 years, and that collapsed very quickly. Now, since we moved literally 1 block down the road from our old place, I got to see Jay lose his primary source of income and have to claim bankruptcy, but also saw that his mother was also trying desperately to find a buyer. I learned 2 years later that she too had to file for bankruptcy. Jay and his mother actually camped out in front of our next apartment for 2 days right before she filed for bankruptcy, and I'm guessing just so they could scream at me or my ex-wife at the time. So I called the cops and said that there were strange people standing in a no parking zone and they kept looking up at the 2nd floor. A cruiser swung by and told them to leave. I know I should have used the 2 months I spent monitoring everything to find a new job, but this was the only time I wanted to hurt a person where they hurt the most, and that's right in their wallets. I think I got my point across because none of this would have happened if they had just fixed the ceiling before it collapsed, and they honestly have nobody to blame except for themselves. Wow, this Jay guy and his mother are absolutely awful. I kinda wish the original poster walked outside, rubbed their fingers together, and pretended to play the smallest violin right as they're trying to basically recover their lives. How on earth could someone be so heartless? Here you have a tenant whose mother passed away, and all you can do is say, "Woe is me, too bad, so sad, give me my money." Like seriously, you're gonna get your money. This is not the time to act like that. Those people were awful, and honestly, this revenge was so well deserved. They were literally slumlords, like there's no other way of describing them. They were skating by on the system and intimidating their tenants into saying nothing. So truly good for the original poster for speaking up. You put these people in their place, and you probably helped a lot of people escape a really sketchy apartment. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for screaming at a lady at the park after she let her unleashed dog near my dog? Here's what happened. So I'm a 21-year-old male, and I've been helping my brother out by walking his large dog while he's on vacation. He is generally well behaved, but he is still reactive to other dogs due to an incident with an aggressive dog. So he has to wear one of those head pulling harnesses, and he has a thick collar so that we can hold onto it if needed. did. The other day, I was walking him down a long road when a woman turned the corner with her dog. It was a smaller dog, think like Italian Greyhound size, but not nearly as slender. I made my brother's dog sit down and I held his collar. But when I looked up, I noticed the dog was off their leash, which is something that's not allowed in this area. She was still a little ways away, but her dog was running up to us. So I shouted by saying, "My dog is not friendly, please get your dog." She shouted for her dog to come back, but it ignored her and kept coming directly for us. She didn't speed up or anything though. Now, my dog is usually pretty good with other leash dogs. He'll be on alert and might pull once or twice, but he's more curious than anything, and making him sit is so everyone is more comfortable since he is a very big dog. Unleashed dogs freak him out though and put him majorly on the defensive, so he was growling and trying to get in between me and this dog. I was trying to get it to go away, but it wasn't leaving. So at this point, I just full body hugged him to try and calm him down and shouted for this lady to get her stupid dog. When she got her dog, she said I didn't need to shout and that he's harmless and he just wants to be friends. So I said to her, "Yeah, well, mine's not harmless and he doesn't like dogs." She then seriously said that I didn't need to be rude about it. I then went back at her and I said, "Would you rather I be rude or your dog dead? Because he saw your dog as a threat and it wasn't going to end well if you didn't come and get him." This really upset her, which is kind of fair. And she said, "Well, maybe he shouldn't be in public if he can't play nice." And I just said, "Or maybe you could follow the rules and keep your stupid dog on a leash. Not everyone wants to be best friends with your dog." She called me some words worse than a jerk and stormed off with her still unleashed dog. Now, for some important context, the incident with the aggressive dog was my brother being attacked by an off-leash dog. They both were okay, but it was traumatic for both of them. So when a dog runs up to us or jumps on us, it honestly freaks him out, and he tries to protect the people he's with. The little dog kept jumping up on me no matter how many times I said no, or even gently pushed it away. We also specifically walked this route since there's lots of signs posted about keeping your dogs on a leash. We're also working to make him less reactive, but he just isn't there with an off-leash dog yet. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? You are not the jerk in this situation. That lady was completely out of line. She was letting this dog walk around without a leash, and that is completely unacceptable. That area is very specific. You have to have a leash if you want to have your dog in the park. That's literally the entire reason you go there. So no, you are not the jerk here. That lady was an absolute moron, and honestly, I would have been rude to her as well, because the way she was acting was inappropriate, and she needs to do better, otherwise a meaner dog is probably gonna snatch up her dog. The new management of a bus depot deny my friends from parking on their property, so they decide to maliciously comply, parking in such a way that blocked one of their entrances and denied them the opportunity to turn their buses around for their routes, thus costing them a lot of money in the process. Here's what happened. My friends live in a house that is in front of a bus depot. There's an entrance on one side and an exit in the other. For years, with permission of the owner, they parked their cars beside the house, along a wide part of the exit for the depot. It was convenient, and friendly relations meant my friends did not complain when diesel engines fired up in the early hours to warm up outside their bedroom windows. A couple decades later, the business is taken over by a national chain, and with that comes a number of changes. New tall fences that obstruct views, gates on the entrances and exits, more buses stored that require more maneuvering, and more young, underexperienced drivers. When moving buses, they regularly chipped a fence post, moving them from the exit to the entrance of the depot. The road was narrow with a big hedge on the other side, so it was not a task to perform carelessly. After a couple of broken fences, eventually the wooden post was replaced with a sturdy, reinforced concrete equivalent, and the driver stopped hitting it in a hurry. Another change that came down the pipeline shortly after was that the owners required my friends to stop parking on depot grounds. They wanted the space for their own staff. After asking if there were other spaces that would be acceptable, they were told in no uncertain terms that the cars were not to be on the property at all under any circumstances. So here comes the malicious compliance, and with it the dawning realization for management that there was a reason the previous owner had been so accommodating, because now they park their cars outside the front of the house instead. As the law does not allow parking on the sidewalk, they must be parked on the road proper, so they absolutely block about half the narrow road. Consequently, the long buses could no longer pull out from the exit and turn around the house without hitting the cars. If they needed to go on a route in that direction or just pull a bus bus around to the entrance, they now have to turn the other way and drive a couple miles around country lanes instead just to get where they need to go. The impact was felt immediately. The depot managers called the police to complain about the obstruction, but the police not only confirmed that the cars were parked legally, but that they must not obstruct the sidewalk, so they could not be parked closer in. Management also petitioned to the local council to have that part of the road designated for no parking, but fortunately for my friends, that has been successfully fought off. Honestly, this is new management's problem. If they had just let these people park in that space, nothing would have changed and everything would have been fine. But instead, they have to drive miles just to get to the entrance and exit of this depot. That is honestly hilarious to me. These buses, by the way, are not easy to drive. I know personally I would not know how to do it. You need to know your routes, and you need to know where you can and cannot turn around. So honestly, the previous owner was really smart. They had a good plan, and they set up a good gig with the people who lived in that house. So honestly, good for you for maliciously complying. This new management and new company absolutely messed up, and as a result of being selfish, they made their lives a lot harder for literally no reason. Am I the jerk for refusing to be available for emergencies during my holiday vacation? Here's what happened. So my holidays were approved by my manager 1 month ago. Yesterday, my colleague John, that's not his real name, which I am very friendly with, also wanted to take a trip to an exotic country to see his friend the same days as my holidays. I told him that I'm very sorry, but I have things planned out and I cannot move my holidays. However, I will not leave the country. I will just spend some time with my boyfriend. Afterwards, my manager tells me that he would really like to approve John's holidays, but I need to be available in case of urgency, even though there's a small risk that an urgency would even arise. Also, he doesn't want the superiors to be mad at him for not having a backup plan in case something urgent arises. But blatantly, I told him that I cannot accept that. I would be busy enjoying my holidays, and I'm not even sure if my manager has the right to ask me that. Well, now I have the impression that my colleague is mad at me for ruining his chance of an exotic holiday, as it seems like a once-in-a-lifetime trip. But I believe that my manager is responsible for this. If he wants to accept the holidays of my colleague, he can sacrifice his own holidays and be available instead. So am I the jerk for ruining my colleague's chances to go on this trip? What should I do? This is not your fault, and this is a classic case of the manager not doing their job. Literally, your manager is there for a reason so that they can find somebody to replace you if there really is some kind of urgent matter. I honestly hate how managers try to make it their employees' problem when they're simply trying to request time off. And that's terrible work practice because it basically bumps one coworker into another, with management seemingly being very nice. So no, you are not the jerk in this situation. Your manager is the jerk for trying to pit you up against John. That's not fair, and if they were actually competent at their job, they would have found a replacement and not bothered you with something so frivolous. I was scammed by a former friend and business colleague out of thousands of dollars for a fraudulent software for my business. And after I demanded a refund, he skated around the issue all the way up until practically denying me my money back. So I decided to get revenge. And as a result, I slowly started dismantling the lives of the people who scammed me out of my money. And I've never been happier to see them get put away behind bars. Here's what happened. I first want to start off by saying that all names in this story are fake. So this happened about 9 years ago. I have an extremely beautiful niece by the name of Emma on my husband's side. She is a head turner. She's very approachable, humble, and very smart. She is also very shy and has trouble asserting herself and enforcing boundaries. Now, I used to know a guy by the name of Dean from my first marketing job. We worked in the same building. Most youngsters knew each other and grouped for lunch at the lobby cafe. He was a very cool guy. He was super funny, amendable, and likable. He was clear in his goal of becoming a business owner. Eventually, our small group kind of disbanded, and I moved on, slowly losing touch with my clique. Fast forward, and now I'm married and actively looking to expand our business. But who should I bump into while at a dentist appointment was Dean himself. We exchanged updates while in the waiting room. He now owned a small business services company. I looked into his website and decided to give his services a try. He became our regular supplier, and our working relationship brought him lots of referrals. So basically, we indirectly helped him build his business. So I had my niece Emma apply for a job at his company as he was actively looking for new workers. She was hired as an employee who would do a little bit of everything. The pay wasn't great, but she was only one course short of graduating and wanted to build her resume. For for about a year, our work routine involved paying him good, steady money for extremely professionally done services. Stuff like payroll, accounting, expo representation, etc. Well, Dean eventually introduced us to Charlie. He had been complaining that his business was getting slower and slower, and Charlie was some sort of consultant to try and fix that. I use the term sort of because his actual scope wasn't clear. Charlie seemed like an okay guy. He was very formal and polite, with just the right balance between seriousness and smiles. We were invited to a business meeting so that Dean could discuss some stuff and hear out our input. This wasn't rare. Dean and I had been avid brainstorming partners, and our sessions helped each other back when we first met. And we had periodical discussions after we reconnected. But little did I know that all of this would fall apart so quickly, as some awful things were clearly brewing under the surface. Now, I wouldn't discuss my business with him for ethical reasons, but I didn't mind hearing him out and perhaps offering my opinion. Charlie and Dean presented a business opportunity, but my husband and I passed. At the end of dinner, everyone pitched in, but the tab was about $90 short. Charlie apologized for not having money on him and directly asked my husband to cover him. So we covered his portion because we felt we were put on the spot. I made up my mind that if the guy didn't pay us back, I would have Dean reimburse the expense. My husband and I left the restaurant and discussed the dinner surprise. We decided to drop it to avoid getting paranoid. We didn't really know this guy and Dean didn't seem bothered at all. Charlie paid us immediately, like at about 10 o'clock the next morning. He was contrite and very apologetic. Charlie eventually became a fixture at Dean's office, and eventually Dean had a change in behavior. He seemed hungry and thirsty for fast money schemes and quick success. They would spend the day in meetings, talking mostly about every multi-level marketing scheme in the book. With Dean constantly out of his office, the quality of services dropped significantly. We had to chase him to deliver things on time, we needed to stress the importance of timelines, etc. Dean's office became sort of a meeting place for the corner cutters, the alpha male wannabes who are really hungry for success and they want to rub that success in everybody's face and call anyone who can't do what they do as incompetent. They were those kind of guys. Our frequent dinner meetings thinned out and Charlie's true character began to surface. He would make awful jokes about women, he would make ethnic jokes, talking down to people, raising his voice. He even took a sip out of my niece's soda and she was absolutely disgusted. So she just gave it to him and got a new one. My niece eventually became Dean's formal assistant, so she had to attend every meeting, sometimes until very late hours. I began to wonder if she was getting paid for the extra hours, but I could be wrong and I didn't want to interfere. We declined every invitation if we knew that Charlie would be there. We signed up for only 3 yearly services and canceled on other services where customer service had declined, and it worked out. Then we paid Dean $10,000 for installing our new platform with full control over our own use of technology. But 3 weeks passed by and we still couldn't use the platform. It didn't support multiple users as needed, and we required someone from Dean's company to visit on a daily basis because we couldn't get it running. So eventually we simply asked for our money back. Dean agreed and paid us $2,000 and promised the other $8,000 in installments. I asked for a personal meeting because I needed the whole thing solved. We had paid our money and no service was rendered, and now we had to wait just to get a full refund? Like, really? By then, Charlie had taken full control and was now running the show. Crucial employees randomly got fired, Charlie began yelling at everyone, and made decisions with Dean never saying a word. And overall, my niece looked incredibly unhappy. Dean had her carry his suitcase and had her constantly serve Charlie some coffee. I did not appreciate the crude jokes that he directed towards her either. Dean did nothing, but I stood up for her. Charlie didn't like being challenged, so the atmosphere got very tense. Honestly, too many things just didn't add up. Charlie tried to paint himself as quite the 007 type of person. He was a former college professor, a former business owner, and a former marketing director. He spent months away from home and dramatically described one fateful New Year's Eve that he spent alone on a plane because he was extremely necessary for the company, so he became somewhat of a workaholic. And this was all the final straw that caused the end of his marriage. He was a fast talker, good with numbers, and knowledgeable. He claimed long motorcycle rides in exotic places such as Italy, but yet he had no car, was living at a friend's house, and showed limited proficiency. I pressed for my money and Charlie went ballistic. He tried to put me in a corner and tried to intimidate me. He asked, "Are you a software expert? Are you? Because if you were, you wouldn't need our services. Answer my question or shut up and stop talking because you don't know what you're doing." I answered that I wasn't an expert and he just replied, "Then shut your stupid mouth. I got up and told him I'm no expert, but I'm a paying client, and I warned him to watch his mouth and that he would not get a second warning. My relationship with Dean was strained. He did not stand up for me, not as a friend, but as a client. I told Dean I would never again deal with Charlie on no uncertain terms. I canceled all accounting and payroll services immediately. I had zero trust. I then researched Charlie's background. None of his corporate experiences checked out. He had an extensive criminal record with gender violence, bank and wire fraud, securities fraud, patrimonial crimes, and a pending arrest warrant dated 8 years prior. I forwarded all of this to Dean and he never replied. I urged my niece to leave her job, but she decided to end her semester and then get another job. But this was an awful idea. She said that Dean owed her overtime and leaving her job would almost guarantee she would never see that money. Dean eventually contacted me with a solution. He gave me some unconvincing apology and asked me to meet him and an excellent software company owner who could help out our situation. I insisted on getting my refund, but he promised he would cover the expense. I then addressed Charlie's criminal records, and he said he didn't know, but had confronted Charlie and had cut ties with him for good, which was a complete lie. Charlie claimed all had been solved and he was now on probation. So fast forward and I meet the lady that's supposed to help us out. Her name was Frances and she was hostile. She was standoffish and had a distinct superiority complex. She owned a yacht, multiple real estates, and had a presence across several states. I left when the meeting was over without an actual resolution. She hardly mentioned anything about software. Frances talked a big game on other topics. I researched her as well and found lots of questionable information. I asked Dean directly if she was in any way connected to Charlie. He offered a vague answer of saying, "I don't know, it could be." But when I pressed for a yes or no answer, he said, "I can't compromise the integrity of my success by indulging in your unfounded assumptions." His business was drying up. He saw Frances as his savior. She engaged him to help her set up one of her big companies and would pay him $750,000 in total. She would also pay him $2,000 a week for 6 months just to do some company creation work. I had a software engineer to install our new system. Our initial intention was to get Dean's software up and running to avoid the additional cost of new installation. The engineer informed me that the software could not possibly run because it was a knockoff from an outdated system. He advised me to file a complaint for fraud. Now, I didn't want to get my niece involved. I just wanted her to get out of that place. By then, Dean was actively trying to insert himself in clients' business. He made stupid decisions based on getting an undetermined percentage of what we achieve. But companies shied away from him and his snake oil tactics. Some more research led me to the conclusion that Dean had inflated his company's capacity for specialty software. So he also inflated the price, took $2,000 for himself, and gave Charlie $8,000 to get whatever garbage they could sell me. This is exactly why I could not get my $8,000 back. Frances was the source of the software. I notified Dean that due to the nature of his relationship with a felon, we were canceling all remaining services. My niece got fired that afternoon, and Dean's excuse was her refusal to give Charlie a ride. Emma came to me and my husband. She was scared and very emotional. She explained that when I gave Dean my canceling notice, she was in the car and was about to get off and enter the office. Dean slammed the door so hard the car shook. She was so perplexed. It took her a few seconds to get out. So Dean opened the door and yelled, "Get out, move." The situation with Charlie was also escalating. Now, Emma addressed this at work, but Dean's response was to say, "Grow up, toughen up. How do you expect to make it in this cutthroat world if you're gonna be so sensitive?" Charlie's jokes eventually became more overtly explicit, if you know what I mean. There was one incident months earlier where Charlie was drunk after yet another failed business meeting, and Dean ordered Emma to drive Charlie home. Well, on the drive home, he tried to come at Emma in a way that was incredibly inappropriate during the ride, and I think you understand in the way that I'm referring to here. He claimed he couldn't remember, and therefore it never happened. So this time, she refused to be Charlie's driver, as well as a victim of Charlie and his awful behavior and demeanor. Dean then fired her after ranting about how Charlie was being targeted by losers and faithless know-it-alls. He got into a power trip and became verbally aggressive, calling her a Miss Goody Two-Shoes and reminding her that she had been able to eat the whole time she worked for him because he paid her out of pity. He emailed her that due to her insubordination, as well as her lack of honesty and malicious manipulation, her duties were terminated effective immediately. But my husband and I supported her. We paid a good lawyer because this was no longer just about money. I went straight to the restaurant where Dean and Charlie routinely held their meetings. I confronted Dean in front of his clients and warned Charlie that his luck had just ended. The next time I would see him, he was absolutely going to pay. I became very attentive to detail. I researched all types of records and found that not only has Charlie jumped probation, but the arrest warrant was still in effect. The legal system had failed miserably at finding him. He had felonies in multiple states, and supposed time doing business overseas was actually jail time. Emma proved her case in court, and Dean had to pay $15,000 in owed salary and punitive damages, and had to pay some fines. I contacted as many of his former fired employees as possible via Facebook and encouraged them to sue him as well. And you know what? 3 of them actually did, with one of them winning. I wanted him under legal and financial strain. He was ordered to refund my money plus legal costs, and the judge didn't accept his excuse that it's Charlie's fault. My contract was direct with Dean, not Charlie. He also had to pay for breach of confidentiality because Charlie wasn't his employee, nor a legally bound business partner. The court opened a new investigation over potential financial fraud, as well as identity theft and information theft, as Dean had access to clients' accounting and payroll information, with lots of data at his fingertips. A new order of apprehension was issued against Charlie, but he ran away. The judge ordered Dean's business to permanently close, and a forfeiture notice was issued. Now fast forward, and I saw on his Facebook business page an announcement that Dean had been invited as a guest lecturer in a nearby college. Funny, because Dean never actually finished college, and I knew this from the beginning. I contacted them and voiced my concern over an unqualified professor teaching at their institution. I leaked his lack of academic standing by trolling their propaganda. They ended up announcing a different professor for the course without further explanation. During that fall, a former coworker called my niece to give her the news that Francis had been arrested by the feds for a fraud scheme. Now, this wasn't related to my revenge, but it was still sweet to see. The best part is that she stopped paying the $2,000 a week early on, but kept stringing him along for free work. I sent a formal notice to all the companies I had referred him to and explained that I could no longer recommend his services. And I added a copy of our own lawsuit. Companies were dropping like flies. Other lawsuits strung along for dishonest services. This set a chain of events that led to his downfall. He had some car repo situations back when the business began to fail. I called the company and told them where to find him and at what time. And that was easy, because although by now he had closed shop, he and Charlie kept eating at the same restaurant like a bunch of idiots. I wasn't there to see it, but confirmed the car was towed away. His marriage broke apart, he faced charges for selling and profiting from illegal software, and he got probation. He lost his home and illegally occupied a portion of the abandoned commercial building right next to his former location. So I leaked this information into an anti-gentrification regional Facebook group. The zone was under scrutiny because residents were being pushed away. He was using the spot as a small office and living quarters, but the residents wanted it as a community center, so they held a protest right in front. The police came, he was charged with trespassing and stealing electricity from a nearby building, and so he basically kissed his probation goodbye. Now when it comes to Charlie, he was harder to nail down. He literally disappeared for years. I could not find him. But again, he later gained confidence. His social media became moderately active. He claimed to own some bogus business, and he never appeared in any of his picture posts. I pondered whether he was posting from inside of jail or something like that. I went to his aunt's profile, and she posted constantly. Some pictures showed him doing family gathering stuff, and I eventually found out via her comments that he now had a younger child and his legs were amputated from too much drinking, as well as having poor control over his blood sugar. He was the same bad person, and he was still a complete liar. There was even a picture caption that said, "Happy birthday, dear son, even though cold-hearted people are keeping us apart." I then found out he had an unpaid child support case, so I anonymously contacted both the baby mama and the child support division. I gave them everything, his aunt's address and every place I knew he visited. Eventually, he was arrested and new charges were filed, including battery and financial abuse of a mentally ill adult. I only recovered $3,000 out of the $8,000 that he took. My case against him lasted almost 2 years, but seeing him all pale and listening to his trembling voice during the court hearings was more than enough to get my revenge. The case took a toll on his already weakened health. His hands trembled, world. He cried and got ill when he was sentenced. He just kind of dropped his head and became super pale. Then he motioned his head to each side and shivered as he got help from the medics. I remember the judge's opening sentence was to say that they were tired of this case. They continued, "In over 10 years, I've read your name in multiple warrants, and yet you avoided responsibility, forcing us to spend taxpayer money on tracking you down. What is wrong with you? You plead and bring up your health problems, but none of that deterred you from stealing, treating people like garbage, and debilitating the integrity of those under your influence." When I heard that, I just smiled at his face as many times as I could, especially when the judge wasn't looking. He eventually served 4 years out of a 36-year sentence and passed away in 2019. But with all things considered, I'm so glad I was finally able to get my revenge. This is an awful situation. Charlie and Dean are unbelievably corrupt. There's no other way to put it. They literally scammed you out of thousands of dollars, and you weren't even able to get all that money back. Like, seriously, that is so messed up. I feel so bad for Emma. I feel so bad for you and your family. It's just unfair that you had to deal with this in the first place. But boy, did you get some revenge. Like, seriously, you absolutely threw the hammer down on these people. They didn't even have a chance to recover. Their dishonesty and all the things they did was just so unacceptable. Like, you think you know somebody like Dean from college, and you probably thought to yourself, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe I can have some kind of professional relationship with this guy, and we can both make money in the process. I mean, the original poster even did that. They would share Dean and his business with all of their mutual friends and give him a good word so that he could spread his business and everybody would benefit. You would get the services for accounting and payroll, as well as all the software you thought was going to be legitimate for your business, and he would get all of your referrals in the process. And I mean, when it comes to business, like, that's just good practice. You help your friends out when they help you out. So the fact that he would betray that trust and not try to find somebody more legitimate to try and get this going and be some kind of consult to all of the business that was going on is honestly mind-blowing. Like, how did he not know that Charlie was some kind of con artist? Are you telling me that this guy really didn't do a background check? If I'm going to be running a business with so many clients and I have all these people that are going to be relying on my services just to make sure that my business is running properly, I'm going to make sure I have the right guy for the job. I'm going to look at references. I'm going to look at background checks. I want to make sure that, I don't have a felon working for me. Now look, don't get me wrong. Just because you made a mistake in your past doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to get a job. Like, if somebody who was a felon was applying for this job and I was Dean in this situation, I wouldn't hesitate to hire them if all of their past mistakes and any obligations they had, whether having a felony or anything like that, was all resolved and taken care of. In that case, I think it's fine. But with someone like Charlie, who had an ongoing case for so many different things, there had to be at least some kind of red flag that popped up for Dean when trying to figure out if this guy was the real deal. And the situation involving Emma was awful. For the sake of the story and being able to share it with all of you, there's aspects of this that I couldn't explicitly say, but I think it's really easy to infer and kind of assume the horrible things they were doing and saying to Emma. Like, it's really bad, and it's something she did not deserve to go through. So honestly, with all things considered, good for the original poster for getting this done. They took these people to the cleaners. They did everything they needed to get these people back for scamming them out of thousands of dollars. So seriously, good for you, because these guys absolutely had it coming. My entitled grandma steals the keys to my apartment just so she can have full access to my apartment whenever she wants. And I've never been more astonished in my life when I found out this information. Here's what happened. So to give some background, my grandmother is a hardcore Catholic former nun and was extremely strict with my dad and with me. My dad got his 17-year-old girlfriend drunk and pregnant, which is obviously a huge no-no in the Catholic Church. My grandma basically pressured my mom to convert to Catholicism and marry my dad, and later they had 2 more kids. But because I was born out of wedlock, I was considered the black sheep of the family. And not just by my grandma, my dad's entire side of the family will never be happy with me, and they hate me and my mom. For reference, I'm 24 years old, and my sisters are 22 and 20 years old. The youngest just moved out with her partner, but neither have jobs, and the middle one and her fiancé are extremely financially irresponsible and live with my parents and just expect to have everything handed over to them. I'm out of the house with a professional job, married and have a child, and have been doing really good for myself, and I'm the disappointment. My grandma was extremely strict and abusive specifically to me. She's yelled at me multiple times, calling me the child of the devil and a demon. She has thrown stuff at my face for no reason, and I wasn't allowed to have any any privacy in her house. I always had to have my bedroom door completely open. She would sit at the foot of my bed until I would fall asleep. I had to spend every weekend and break from school with her until I started working at 15. And she would scream at me if I locked the bathroom door. You get the idea. She would also threaten to call the cops if we didn't comply with her, and there were multiple instances where she would call the cops if we didn't answer our cell phones. And mind you, she called at like 7 in the morning and 10 o'clock at night on separate occasions, and I've woken up to cops knocking at my door. And yes, this has happened while I'm at home and out of town, where I didn't even tell her where I was staying. She's literally just that crazy. With that context out of the way, here's what happened with my crazy grandma. Anyways, when I was 20 years old, I decided to move out with a couple of friends. My grandma demanded that I give her a key to the duplex. I refused for multiple reasons. In the first place, I don't need my grandma being able to come over whenever she wants, especially since one of my roommates was my boyfriend. In the second place, we threw a lot of get-togethers, and I don't need her lecturing my friends that Dungeons and Dragons and anime and all of that are tools of the devil, and that we all need to go to church with her. And for third, we had all agreed to not give out our copies of the keys to literally any family members, and I'm not about to have my friend's privacy invaded, all because my grandma just can't handle not having control of every little part of my life. I mean, she still called multiple times every day and found excuses to try and come over as much as possible. And every time for the first couple of months, she kept demanding I give her a key to our place, but I kept refusing. Well, at one point, my youngest sister was spending the night and my grandma dropped her off. We were gonna go do some shopping, but I couldn't find my keys. I'm looking everywhere and I can't find them anywhere. So my grandma offered to pick up what I needed to make dinner. I reluctantly agreed and went back to looking for my keys. They somehow were right on the bar. I didn't think much of it at the time because I do stuff like this all the time, but my sister told me that there's more to this story than just finding my keys. Apparently, the next day when my grandma picked her up, she bragged to her about how she stole my keys when I wasn't looking and made herself a copy of the key so she can go inside whenever she wanted. Now, she's never barged in while I'm home, so I'm guessing she was coming in when no one was home and going through everything. And of course, for my grandma, it's all justified because she's just making sure that we're making good Catholic choices. It also wouldn't be the first time she's gone through my stuff when I'm not home, because she would do the same thing at my parents' house and then berate me if she found things that she didn't like. Apparently, she has been trying to steal my keys for this house too, but she hasn't been able to figure out where I keep my keys. But I keep our keys in my bedroom in the far back of the house, and I will not have my keys around her for this exact reason. Wow, this is literally illegal. I don't know if you know this or not, but that is not okay. She is literally going through your property and going through all of your stuff, all because you moved out and she wants some kind of control. Like, she literally can't just have copies of her keys to your house and think that that's okay. That's really messed up, and hopefully when this happened, you guys changed the locks or something like that. I personally can't imagine having someone in my life who would act like that and still pretend like we're family, because this is a one-way ticket to getting kicked out of my life permanently. So hopefully your grandma's chilled out by now, because from the sounds of it, it really seems like she's crossing over several boundaries, and that, in my opinion, is absolutely not okay. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. My fiancé will not clean up after himself, despite the fact that I've tried to get him to clean up so many times. And at this point, I'm at my wit's end and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I first off want to say that I feel like this is such a common tale, but you know what? I'm gonna tell it anyways. Me and my now fiancé have been dating for 2.5 years. I'm a 23-year-old female and he is 24 years old. We are both full-time students, but his family is a little more fortunate than mine and support him financially, while my parents cannot offer me that. So I work, but he does not have to, since his parents pay for his bills. At the beginning of the month, we got an apartment together. Right before going on a short study abroad outside the country, during our trip, he proposed, which was really exciting for the both of us. Now that we've both returned, a lot of issues are popping up, and I'm not too pleased with him, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to discuss said issues with him. First off, let me start by saying that my boyfriend is diagnosed autistic, while I am neurotypical. Even when visiting his family home for the first time, I noticed that he has a very specific way he keeps things, and to me it is not clean or organized, but to him it makes sense. For example, example, to me, a clean set of towels should not be sitting in the middle of the floor. For him, if they are sitting directly in the middle of the floor, he won't forget to grab one for his showers, as his family usually keeps their towels in a closet, which allows him to forget to grab a towel sometimes. When he lived in the dorms, he often stayed with me, and we could usually work these quirks out between us by arranging things in a manner that was neat, as well as organized and made sense for him. Now that we lived together, it was not going so well. The first issue was that prior to moving in, we discussed his mannerisms and agreed that he would not bring too much stuff. He is a very sweet, sentimental guy and keeps everything. And by everything, I mean he keeps receipts from significant dates in our relationship, pieces of broken items, any type of mail he receives, childhood toys, etc. We have a 2-bedroom apartment and agreed that one room would be our bedroom and one would be an office and a guest room, so we can have some place to study. Well, long story short, it is full of random items he brought from home. His parents are also kind of over his odd sentiments and sent him here with everything he has ever brought home basically. He loves odd things and has been getting furniture and placing it in his parents' basement to the point that they had to get a storage unit just for his stuff. And when we moved here, they just sent it with him because they are tired of paying for it. This means we have all kinds of lamps, nightshades, real wooden furniture, boxes of mismatching dishes, all in our 2-bedroom apartment. Our office is basically a storage room with a tiny trail leading to his computer. Most of the stuff is junk or just needs a new home. His family has never told him no on bringing these things home, and I feel like they have even enabled him to the point that he thinks it's just a normal thing to have those items, even though he doesn't need them, but he likes them. He won't allow me to help him go through this stuff and get rid of it because he hates to waste stuff. Aside from this, like I said, I work and he doesn't. This isn't a financial issue, but as far as housework goes, if I don't give him a specific list of things to clean or how to clean up after himself, he will not do anything for the most part. So I'll get home from a long shift and items will be misplaced throughout the house, and I can literally walk around the house and observe various areas to see what he's been doing all day, because any mess associated will still be there unless I tell him to remember to clean up after said action. For some examples, his bed will be unmade, milk glasses will be on the coffee table, coffee grounds and stains will be left on various surfaces, clothes will be on the floor right next to the laundry basket, and the list goes on and on. I get home and can clean up his messes in less than the 5 minutes it takes me to get in the door, but I'm perfectly aware that he is able to handle these things on his own and shouldn't need me telling him what to do for it to get done. In the past, I've had to point out these behaviors to him because he doesn't see why it's a problem. Thankfully, he usually corrected these behaviors, but I feel like it was only because he had the threat of housing coming and being upset about this mess. Now that it's just us, it doesn't bother him, and no one is going to hold him accountable for his messes, so he just thinks that it's fine. Except it is actually messing with my mental health to have to continuously clean up after him and play project manager if I want him to do it. How do I have a productive conversation with him so that he understands that we have to keep our home clean even if it's only for ourselves? Like I said, his parents never really advised against this behavior, and they simply gave him more space to cram more stuff in their house. Also, any advice on the item hoarding would be absolutely fantastic. What should I do? This is honestly unacceptable behavior. This guy is 24 years old. Seriously, it's time to clean up after yourself and be the man that he needs to be in this relationship. Because what he's doing right now is very disrespectful to your space. He clearly doesn't care that you're in the house. He doesn't care that you're exhausted after coming home from work, and he doesn't care to even, I don't know, get a job and provide for himself. And sure, he receives money from his family, but the way his family is acting is really inappropriate. It's not okay that they're enabling this behavior, and it's now spilling over into your life. Like seriously, that needs to stop in my opinion. Also, just look at the way your future husband is acting. He stays at home, his parents provide for him, and he doesn't even have the decency of cleaning up after himself, even after you've asked him so many times to do just that. This is literally what you're probably gonna have to deal with for the rest of your marriage. I hate to be that guy, but this is absolutely how it's gonna be. And I'm not sure if you telling him, hey, you need to get this together and clean up after yourself, or having some kind of intervention again, is going to address the far more complex issue he probably is dealing with. It sounds like this is some kind of compulsion, and I don't know about you, but I would not know the first thing about what to do to try and fix that. Like, I'm really convinced that this behavior will not change when you get married. So honestly, the choice is up to you. It really sounds like this person needs to get a grip and try and pull their life together. And I think you need to consider what your future marriage is literally gonna look like. Even when you two eventually get a new house together or some kind of living arrangement where you guys have a lot more room to move around and do whatever you want, I'm really convinced that this is still going to be a problem. It's just gonna give him more room to fill up your house with useless junk. So hopefully something changes about this situation, because from the way you've described it and the way he's been enabled his entire life, I really don't see anything changing anytime soon. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for kicking my high school friend out of my house after she takes advantage of me and my husband, as well as our hospitality for several months? Here's what happened. So I've had friends and family stay with me until they were able to get their life together, and once they have, they would then move out. So when a high school friend by the name of Sharon, that's not her real name, texted me for a place to stay, I said yes with no hesitation. And honestly, this is the biggest mistake of my life, because I missed all the red flags throughout the years of knowing her. For a bit of backstory, when we were in high school, she would stay at my house when her parents kicked her out, which was just about every other week. I never asked questions about why. I just allowed her to come over. I sometimes would be at her house, and her mom would just come into her room and tell her to get out of her house. Sharon was in a grade behind me, so when I graduated high school, my mother moved in with her boyfriend at the time, and I moved in with mine. Sharon and I hung out, but since I was living in my boyfriend's mom's house, I couldn't allow her to stay with me anymore. I got pregnant a few months after I graduated and moved in my mom's boyfriend's house, which was further from where Sharon lived, so we would just talk on the phone. Things didn't work out between my mom and her boyfriend, so she decided to move to another state, which was 10 hours away, and I followed her. Sharon and I stopped communicating, but only for a short time. In the meantime, my mom gets married to a new guy, and I have my baby boy. I miss my boyfriend, so I decided to move back to my home state and live with him and his family. I got back in contact with Sharon, and it was like I hadn't left for 6 months. We hung out as usual until I got pregnant again with my baby girl. I didn't want to raise my 2 kids in my hometown, and I wanted a better area to raise them in. I called my mom and the new husband to come get us, and they drove the 10 hours to pack us up and take us back to their house, leaving my boyfriend behind. Sharon and I stayed in touch, but that was the last time we had seen each other face to face. Over the years, I had 3 more children and got married to another man. She also had 3 kids of her own, all girls, but never ended up marrying anybody. She told me about the businesses and the houses that she owns, so I was glad that she was living a good life. Well, fast forward to the present day, and one day I get a text from Sharon stating she was getting kicked out of her house and had nowhere to go, and she was asking if she could stay with me. Now, by this time, I had my own small business, and only me, my husband, and my youngest son were all living together. My other 3 kids were in college, and the other was about to graduate high school, but just moved out of our home in the 11th grade. So I used his room as my home office. Since I had an extra room, I told her yes without talking it over with my husband. She told me it would be her, 2 of her daughters ages 4 and 14, as well as a dog. I told her she will have to pay the water bill if she does stay, and she said that she would do that. But when she finally got to my house, it just started going downhill from there. She told me she got kicked out of her house because the city had condemned her home, which is honestly a big red flag. I really didn't think much of it though at the time. After an hour of her being in my home, her 4-year-old daughter proceeds to remove all of her clothing and run around my house while Sharon is sitting on the couch laughing. I instantly get upset and demand that she put some clothes on because I have 2 men in the house. Her daughter continues to do this for a few more days until I yell at her to stop. Then the 4-year-old starts putting objects in her bottom, if you know what I mean, which also disturbs me, and I have to say something about it. And this is all on top of her daughter not being able to talk. I instantly want her out of my house, but I don't want the kids on the street. Every week my mom comes to my house so I can dog sit. She has to go to the office once a week and doesn't want her dog to be alone. This particular morning, my mom asks Sharon, "So, what kind of job are you looking for?" She tells my mom she refuses to work. I looked at her like, whose house do you plan on staying in with no income? But I didn't say a word. I just left the house to do my normal routine. She told me that she had a small business as well as making natural soaps and scrubs, and that it was very successful. I only opened my store on the weekends and told her she could put her stuff in there and sell them. She made only 6 soaps to put in the shop. When she was in the shop with me, Sharon would be on her phone the whole day and not try to sell anything or even try to get clients. minutes, and would also bring her youngest daughter, who would cry the entire time. I told her she was not allowed to come to the shop anymore, and I took her products off my shelves. On top of the mess, she also wanted to add dreadlocks to her hair, and I told her about my best friend, who is also a beautician but lives about 30 minutes away. My friend told her that it would be $600 to do the style that she wanted and to set up a date and a time. At the same time, we find out that she has a rat's nest in her car, and they literally chewed up the wires. So Sharon had to take the car to the dealership to get it repaired, and the damages came up to about $3,000. Meanwhile, the water bill that she owes was coming up to about $100. Sharon comes up to me and says on Friday that she needs me to take her to get her hair done, and that she'll have her friend pay the water bill. I told her, no, I'm not taking you. I have things to do, and I'm not giving her any of my information, but she better have the money by Friday when it's due. She got mad and she proceeded to tell me that she doesn't have the money, which she clearly did if she's paying $600 to get her hair done, and she had someone else paying it for her. Well, come to find out that she didn't have a dime to her name, and she was literally on the phone panhandling money all day, telling people sob stories and lies to get them to send her money, and that's how she got $600. She finally convinced my friend to come to my house to do her hair, and she would give her the gas money. Before my friend left, she asked Sharon, well, do you like your hair? And she said yes. But as soon as my friend left, she starts to complain about her hair and wants her to drive all the way back to my house to redo it, and starts taking her hair out. Now, at this point, I was completely fed up, and I was ready for her to move out. She moved in my house in February, and I served her an eviction notice in March that she had to be out of my house in June when the kids get out of school. The next 3 months were a living nightmare. The room that she was staying in was already furnished with a bed and a dresser, and the room looked like she had been living there for years. It was so dirty and it smelled really bad. The room is right off my living room, so I was embarrassed to have company over. She would leave her dog in the cage with urine and all sorts of droppings all over the place until my husband and I would yell at her about the smell. My husband even offered her a job, and she refused to work. All she did was sit in the bedroom, ignore her kids, and talk on the phone from the time she woke up until the time she went to sleep. In the meantime, her 14-year-old daughter is trying to tell her that she wants more time with her. She did leave a few weeks before she was to be evicted, and she only left early because where I live, they only do bulk pickup once a year, and the furniture in that room we were absolutely going to throw out. I didn't want to keep anything in that room after she left, especially the mattress we just got before she came in. We had to put the stuff on the curb 2 days before so the trash people would know what to collect. My husband had informed her 2 weeks before we were throwing it out. Now, in terms of the aftermath of this situation, she opened a funding account asking for money to move and then lied, which I didn't see until she moved out and found a diary that her 14-year-old daughter had left. The diary was the scariest because I found out that her daughter was obsessed with my 13-year-old son. Well, honestly, I'm glad that my son locks his doors when he sleeps at night, and from this experience, I will never let anyone else move into my home ever again. That honestly sounds like a nightmare. Here you are trying to open up your house to a high school friend, only to find out that this high school friend is an absolute deadbeat. Like Sharon sounds like an absolute leech. That must have been a nightmare to deal with. You literally tried out of the graciousness of your own heart to have her pick herself up and get her life going again. But instead, she takes advantage of your situation. She was refusing to work and she smelled awful. She was straight up just panhandling for money. All this horrible stuff over and over again. I mean, the first few days must have been a nightmare as you realized, oh no, I really do not want Sharon in my house. So on one hand, I think it's very kind and nice of you to want to open up your home to friends, but clearly this is a lesson that maybe we shouldn't do that again in the future. My entitled coworker tries to ruin my life by framing me for a mistake that happened within the company. So I decided to get revenge by secretly recording his confession that he did try to frame me for this massive mess up and that he would happily do it all over again. Here's what happened. I work in the United Kingdom for a large technology company doing software support. I'm part of a team that has members all over the world. I've been in this job for around 10 years, and other than the major issues I've had with this guy, I truly enjoy my job. When I started with the company, I wouldn't say I was green, as I had about 7 years of industry experience under my belt. I was definitely inexperienced though with the company, but the job that I had been hired to do used technologies that I was more than comfortable with. The point I'm trying to convey convey here is that I wasn't completely oblivious to all the applications supported by our company. Everyone in my team, around 30 of us, were very nice and were very keen to help out. Everybody that is, except for Shane. Shane is not his real name. Shane is probably what you'd term as a team guru. About 5 years from retirement, part of the office furniture, he'd been with the company for nearly 40 years. Everyone labeled Shane as the only guy to go to when you were truly in a bind. When I was initially starting out, I did indeed find that Shane was highly knowledgeable and more often than not had the answers to whatever obscure questions you might have. Things were great, and our team ticked over nicely. I got to know the rest of the team well over the phone over time as well, and my best friend was a woman by the name of Mel. Mel is also not her real name. Now, she was of similar age and experience level to Shane, and in my opinion was just as knowledgeable as him. One day, Mel and I were on a brief call chatting about a work issue. When we got to shooting the breeze for a while, we talked about ourselves and also the team. I'd said that I hadn't met anyone face to face yet, and that was when she told me she'd once met Shane in person a couple of years ago. They are both based in the United States, and they both got invited to a tech conference in New York. She told me that he has serious health issues due to his weight. He is around 450 pounds, and when he was home, he was often on oxygen and medication. His plan was to ride these things out until he was able to take an early retirement so that he didn't need to worry about paying for his medical insurance anymore. That sounded like a reasonable enough plan to me, and we were soon talking about something else. But the issue started about 2 years into my tenure with the company. We started moving in a new direction with what applications we were going to be offering to customers, and towards that end, we were trained in a bunch of new stuff. I saw this as a great opportunity and equalizer. If no one on our team had any experience with this new software, then I would be on equal footing with everybody. Now, this went really well for me, and I put a lot of time and effort into learning as much as possible. But Shane didn't show much interest in the new stuff. He still continued to spend most of his time with the legacy tools. In team meetings, you could clearly tell he was getting really upset that his status as a guru was gradually becoming more and more meaningless. This wasn't anything personal. We work in software. You have to adapt in order to remain competitive. As time went on, it was becoming clear to the team how much work I was putting in, and I was well on the way to becoming the go-to guy for the new software. During this time, Shane would start snapping at me for anything he could plausibly manage. For example, if I was late to a team meeting because a customer call ran over or something like that, he would make sure to interrupt whatever was being said to comment something like, "Oh look, the original poster has bothered to grace us with his presence," even though he's been guilty of the same thing in the past. Things like email chains as well. Almost anything I sent out that included him, as well as our boss in an email, he would reply with some unrelated complaint or observation, completely irrelevant to what was actually being discussed. One day, Mel called me and asked me what my beef with Shane was all about. I truthfully told her that I had no beef with him at all, and he just seemed to have it out for me for some reason. She told me that if she managed to find anything out, she would let me know. Things continued like this for a couple of years. I continued to be the go-to guy, and he continued to try and discredit me, and generally paint me in as bad of a light as possible. One day we had a major incident, one that literally could have cost the company millions of dollars in fines if it was not solved quickly. Our manager split us into teams to troubleshoot specific areas, and she paired me up with Shane. I wasn't happy about it, but whatever. I was a professional and I would get it done. We got on a call and started working through the issue. As our call progressed, it became abundantly clear why he didn't like me. He knew nothing about the new application. He had not done any work on it at all. Everything I asked him to check, he needed hand-holding, even for the most basic of tasks. Eventually, I just shared my screen and said for him to watch me. I went into the guts of the system. I went through so many logs, explaining to him what I was doing the whole time, and eventually, I found that the problem was a recent patch that we had installed. At this point, we dropped from the call. I didn't think anything of this at the time, especially since we would use Skype for business calls and that really was flaky, so I just continued to do what I was doing. Our process was not to roll back any changes until it had been approved by the senior manager. As I was the one responsible for deploying and rolling back patches, I made some notes about what we needed to do and then rejoined the main call. I wasn't worried at all because bad patches happened every so often. They just didn't usually have this level of impact. that. As soon as I did, I got absolutely destroyed by the incident manager. Apparently, Shane had returned to the group call and informed everybody present that the outage was caused by an error that I had made in the deployment process, and that Shane had told me what the correct fix was, and I had refused to implement it then and there. I was absolutely furious. He had accurately told them the cause of the problem because it was me who literally demonstrated to him how to find it. I had even foolishly mentioned to him what I thought would fix the problem. Because of how long he had been with the company compared to me, only our immediate team knew the truth about who was really the better skilled person in this situation. His historical reputation still carried a lot of weight with people who didn't work day to day with him. Because this incident was so major, over 100 people were in this call, with several of them being 2 or 3 levels of management above our team. He made me out to be a reckless, incompetent idiot, and he was believed by everybody. Despite my managers protesting, I was disciplined and given a verbal warning. Meanwhile, he was congratulated for steering the company away from a potential disaster and even given congratulations. I was so angry, and a while later, Mel gave me a call. Apparently, Shane had been bragging to her about putting that smart punk in his place. She was shocked and asked him what he was talking about. His real beef was that he thought I had disrespected him by trying to take over his role as the go-to guy for the new software. That wasn't my intention at all. I didn't see it as my fault that he was too lazy to do the work again. I lamented with Mel that she should have recorded the call. She laughed and said that Skype shows when you're recording a call, and he would have never spilled his guts while being recorded. But right about then, I immediately had a brainwave. I decided that I would confront Shane one-on-one. I pinged him on Skype and I said that I wanted to talk. He responded with a smiley and just said sure. I called him and let him know that I was recording the call, and the Skype notification popped up to let all participants know that this call was being recorded. I went right for it. I accused him of lying about the major incident and said that it seemed like he had a major beef with me. As expected, he completely lied and said that he was sorry that I felt like I had to react this way. He said that he would need to talk to our boss about it. I said, wait 1 second, and then turned off the Skype recorder. I then said that Skype isn't recording and that he knew exactly what he had done. His mask then slipped for just this moment, and he said that he was perfectly in his rights to put me in my place. He said that you need to respect the longer serving people in jobs like this, and that he would do it again in a heartbeat. I didn't hold back. I called him a dinosaur who refused to move with the times and wanted to coast out his days here without doing any work. He said that he has a couple of years away from retirement and that he is not going to bust his butt for some shiny new software. I said to him, speaking of new software, have you ever heard of OBS? And of course he hadn't. I then suggested that he Google it, and then I hung up on him. Not long after the messages started, he was begging me not to use the secret recording that I had just taken. He said that if he gets fired, he will lose his retirement package and his medical benefits. I told him to get lost and kick some rocks, and he should have considered that before trying to get me fired. So I passed this all on to the relevant channels before giving it any thought. Things set in motion, and sure enough, a few weeks later, after a company investigation, Shane was fired. I heard from Mel that he had asked to take an early retirement so as to keep his benefits, but this was apparently rejected. It all came out later that apparently he had significant debts and that he was counting on his retirement package to keep him financially afloat. With no job and no package, he had no money to pay for the medical treatment which he needed so badly. He was in no state to get himself a new job, and his skills had stagnated so badly that he couldn't even get a new job online. Now, Mel did tell me he did pass away 6 months after this whole incident due to his ongoing health issues. Now, I felt conflicted about this for a while. Sharing that recording obviously contributed to his passing, but I don't know how bad I feel about it. I am a young man trying to build my career, and he actively tried to destroy me. I should maybe have held off when he pleaded for me not to reveal the truth, but he was old enough and wise enough to not engage in the childish games that he played. If I had known that he would pass away as a result of this, I maybe would have done things differently. It's one of those things that definitely stays with me for sure. I'm still at the company, and I can tell you all that I will never treat a new employee the way he treated me. So maybe the breaking of that cycle is the positive that comes out of all of this. Okay, that's a crazy story. First off, you are not the bad guy for submitting this to HR. This guy was out for your job. This guy really wanted to try and get you taken taken down a few pegs, and he was willing to lie about you to try and get you fired. Submitting that evidence to corporate was the right thing to do, and in my opinion, he did this to himself. And he basically said, yes, I'm gonna do this again in a heartbeat. Any chance of talking this out and having some kind of rational conversation, in my opinion, went straight out the window the second he said that. He basically proved he was gonna try and ruin your job and your life. You know, the job that you've worked really hard on. And sure, he wants to have his retirement package. But guess what? If you want to go to work, then you need to adapt and learn the new software, or at least make some kind of attempt. But this guy tried to be this weird, cocky, and prideful guy, and in effect try and take you out just because you're trying to do your job. So personally, if I was in your shoes, I would not beat myself up over this. No one could have predicted that he would pass away right after he got fired from his job. That is legitimately, in my opinion, absolutely not your fault. And I don't think it's right for you to feel so bad about this and to make it seem like this is all your fault, because I personally don't think it is. Because you have to remember, he tried to frame you for almost losing millions of dollars in the company. He would have tried to blacklist your name from that industry in general. This guy was trying to ruin your life. And honestly, in my opinion, if you are going to play stupid games, well then congratulations, you're gonna win stupid prizes. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for telling my son that he doesn't work but simply has a job after he complained about getting scheduled for 2 weeks in a row? Here's what happened. My son recently graduated college, and I let him move back in for free while he looks for an actual job. I don't expect any rent out of him, as I want him to save up for when he moves out. He's currently a server at a safari cafe in our local zoo. Now, my son had a great work ethic in school. He graduated cum laude with a STEM degree, but now he doesn't. He frequently comes home upset about annoyances with his job and customers. He himself has told me that he only does enough to get by, and he always comes home exhausted after his shift. He complains constantly about things that are small issues, and it leaves me annoyed, as it comes across as him being spoiled and entitled. He complains about his hours, which are less than 40 hours a week, complains about how hot it is outside, and whines that he doesn't get a lunch break when he again works at a restaurant and isn't working a full 8-hour shift. Recently, he came home angry about another issue. He of course offloaded it onto me and told me that his manager scheduled him for 12 days straight, starting after his next day off. This was apparently to compensate for a few of the servers going back to college and his restaurant being short-staffed. I told him to look at the bright side. He would be making overtime on his next check, and he would get more tables, which means he would get more tips. He told me that he wanted his weekends. I reminded him that all he does on his weekends is sit in his room playing his PlayStation, and that he's better off making more money. I told him that he is acting like a spoiled brat who was afraid of doing some extra work, and that when I was in the military, I would sometimes work 16-hour shifts for 4 weeks straight with no days off, and that 12 days isn't that long. He told me that he still didn't want to do it, and that he was likely going to speak to his manager about it the next time he was there. I advised him against it, and he said he just doesn't want to work 12 days straight. I told him that he doesn't work. He just has a job. He takes orders and brings out food. Sure, it's hot outside, and he has to walk a bit, but he's not doing any actual work, and that he can call it work when he has a serious job. But for now, he's better off just going to get his job and raking in a little bit extra money to walk back and forth from tables and talk to people. He decided he didn't have anything to say back and stormed off. The next day, his older sister called me to tell me that I should apologize, apparently because he was really upset by what I said, and she felt I owed him an apology, and that I was wrong to minimize what he was feeling. I told her that he's a grown man, and he can approach me and demand an apology if he chooses so. But if he can't defend his laziness, I won't apologize. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? The original poster definitely comes off as a jerk in this situation. I think they mean well, but honestly, you need to apologize. Telling him that he's not actually working and that his job isn't real is really insulting. Because you know what? Being a server and dealing with people like the original poster really does suck, and it's absolutely demoralizing. Your son doesn't want to work there. He literally hates working there because he would rather be using his degree in a field that he wants to work in. So of course, he's gonna come home and be really upset and not want to be there for 12 days in a row. Your son is not lazy. He is literally going and doing what he needs to do to make money. So for you to say, oh, you don't have a real job, you're just walking walking around. That is honestly ridiculous, and yes, you absolutely should apologize. Because you just don't say that to somebody. You don't just dissolve somebody's job down to what you think it is, and then claim that whatever they're doing to you isn't real work. Because trust me, as someone who's worked as a server, it absolutely is work. That requires a lot of tenacity and a lot of grit to deal with these people who are so rude to you. You have no power in those situations, and you're just trying to suck up to get some money from them. Because by the way, you're not getting paid enough by your job. The job sucks, and yes, it is a job. So in my opinion, I absolutely think the original poster is being a jerk, and I think they need to suck up their pride and go to their son and apologize for what they said. Because this tough guy act is only going to drive your son away. And trust me, he will absolutely remember this later in his life. My husband of 16 years has walked out on me and our 2 kids and is now having a baby with his new girlfriend who lives overseas. And now I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 46-year-old female, and I've lived with my husband who's 48 years old for over 20 years. We've been married for 16 years, and we have 2 kids together. One is 16 years old and one is 9 years old. 1 year ago, he decided that he has had enough of family life and went to live with his parents for some time. He was behaving like a bachelor for the entirety of his stay with them. He found a girlfriend and was drunk constantly. He had used alcohol before, but we never had much problems around it. He also spent a lot of his time playing games with friends on his computer. 1 year ago, he informed me that he found a girlfriend and was ready to move out of our apartment and cut ties. Although he didn't quite do that. He left me, all while I was making close to minimum wage to care for our 2 kids, and also left a collection of unpaid bills going back for months. After that, I fell into a depressive episode that lasted 2 months, and my 2 closest friends managed to get me out of it. About 3 months after he left us, he sort of came back, but not really. He started coming to our city, hanging out with the kids again and also with me, inviting me out for drinks and dinner. All was going well, and my 16-year-old ended up going on a week-long trip with him. For a while, all was going well. He said that the girlfriend was a lie, and he just needed some time away to clear his head. Last night, I sent him a message that said, "Good night, I love you." And it's a text that I usually do, but in the morning, he replied by saying, "I don't deserve your love. I'm about to become a dad again. I'm sorry." I later called him to ask what he meant by that, and he told me that he has a girlfriend in another country who is pregnant with his kid. She plans to keep it, and he wants to cut ties with me and our kids just to care for that child. I don't know what to do now. I requested divorce, but he declined, saying that he was not ready. Can anyone give me advice regarding this situation? Can I divorce him anyways, even though he doesn't want to do it yet? Is there any way I can secure payments to my kids, since with only my job, I can barely make ends meet for the basics? I do some odd jobs here and there, but it's not enough. What should I do? First off, I want to say that the way your husband's been treating you is awful. This guy ran off, went to another country, and got another woman pregnant. He lies to you about having a girlfriend, and then when you tell him you love him to try and find some kind of connection again, he's like, "Psych, I actually do have a girlfriend, and by the way, she's pregnant." Like, this guy's living in a fantasy world if he can even begin to claim that he's some kind of husband or father figure. And also, just as a little side note, you can absolutely divorce him without consulting with him first. If you want to go that route, you do not need his permission. Like, think about the facts for a second. He has betrayed your trust. He walked out on you and the kids. He is obviously trying to live some kind of second life while also keeping you and the kids on the side. If anything, he sounds like the kind of dad who's only there for the good times, but suddenly disappears when times get tough. I think anybody listening can relate to that or has known somebody like that. So truly, I am so sorry you have to deal with this. I'm so sorry your husband has betrayed your trust, and hopefully you and your kids can find some kind of happiness, because the way he's acting is incredibly selfish. It's very clear that he does not care about you or the kids in the slightest, and I feel that all 3 of you deserve so much better. An entitled jerk tries to ruin my life by spreading false rumors about me at the church I used to go to, and after being so hurt and emotionally destroyed, I decided to get some revenge and exposed him for the creep and the weirdo he is, and effectively ruined his life and his reputation forever. Here's what happened. So about 6 to 7 years ago, I was a student at a conservative Christian college. I had attended the same Bible-believing church since I was a small child. It was large, about 1,000 members, but not really one of those mega churches that you might find. The church had been an enormous part of my life life for as long as I could remember. I played piano for the youth choir, I preached at the children's church service, I drove the church bus to pick up other children, etc. I did all of this for free too, by the way, not even getting reimbursed for any expenses. During my senior year in college, we got a new minister of music, education, and youth. Now, this guy was as charming as an ice cream sundae with razor blades in it. I'll call him Mr. Charming for the sake of the story. And all of the deacons and their wives thought that he walked on water. He was straight up an authoritarian jerk. In his first meeting with the church youth group, he announced that he had been hired to straighten out the youth group itself. One of his favorite sayings was to say, "When I tell my disciples jump, the only questions they'll be asking is how high and how far." Now, the adults loved him, but the youth absolutely hated him. Within a few weeks, half of the high school and college students, all of those without parents in the church, basically quit coming to church. Most of the youth directors would have gotten into trouble over this, but he had the audacity to proclaim in front of the entire congregation that he had eliminated all the thorny ground from the youth group, and that the pastor and all of the deacons loved him for it. He didn't waste any time going after what he really wanted though. He wanted the pastor's job. The pastor was about 60 years old. Within a few weeks of Mr. Charming's arrival, rumors started circulating about the pastor's health. He was an avid runner and a cyclist, and apparently he just didn't seem to be as mentally sharp as he used to be. The worst of all, however, was the accusation that the pastor was really too liberal for the church. And in my denomination, it was a kiss of death to even be suspected of being a liberal. Now, none of these accusations made any sense, but people kept talking about them. I have no idea why the pastor didn't find out, or maybe he did find out and was just too scared to do anything about it. Now, in some denominations like Catholic or Methodist, the denomination assigns a pastor, but not my church. Each church calls the minister. This guarantees that every pastor always walks a razor edge, meaning that the slightest slip up and you are definitely out. And you don't even need to slip up. Maybe you even do the right thing and it still offends enough people, and then just like that, you're out. Or in this case, maybe just like the pastor, some creep just lies about you and decides that he wants your job. And since the church often owns your house, your entire family is suddenly homeless and destitute. Eventually though, I became a target, and I honestly still don't know why. A couple of months after starting to work for my church, Mr. Charming called me and informed me that my services were no longer needed. So I was out when it came to youth choir, children's church, as well as bus ministry. In fact, he said he didn't even want me to participate in any of these functions at all, not even go to Sunday morning worship service. I later found out that members of his family had been hired by the church at very nice rates of pay to perform these functions that I'd been doing for free for such a long time. His wife got paid more for playing a beat-up piano at the 1-hour youth choir rehearsal than the main organist got paid for playing the adult choir rehearsal, plus Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings. I mean, the wife could barely pick out the notes on a piano. This lady radiated bitterness, resentment, and repressed anger, but she rarely said anything. She just sat there and glared, which was somehow even creepier than when she spoke. Now, when this happened, I was very hurt emotionally, so I dropped by the pastor's office and tearfully asked him what I'd done wrong. I couldn't get a straight answer, except for the fact that he told me that people are saying things about me, and that if I wanted to get a good recommendation from him to our denomination's minister school, then I'd better shut up and do what I'm told. So I started asking all of my church friends what people were saying about me. Everyone, and I mean everyone, said to me, "Well, I didn't want to tell you, and I don't believe it, but here's what I heard." And according to the rumor mill, I had gotten my girlfriend pregnant, forced her to get rid of the child, if you know what I mean, and that I'd been arrested for possession of the herb, and my dad had to pay a bunch of money just to keep people quiet. I mean, these were the rumors that were being spread. So I did what the pastor told me to do. I never darkened the door of that church ever again. It really hurt my feelings. I had devoted my life to that church since I was a little kid, but I had to have the pastor's recommendation to get into the minister school that I wanted to go to, and the pain was just unbearable even driving by the church. So I decided to keep my distance. But I started thinking about Mr. Charming. Anyone who was that evil had to have some kind of past, and it probably wasn't a good one. I knew that just before working for my church, he had worked at a large church in the same denomination in a small town about 50 miles away. That church was actually about twice the size of my church, so he had moved from a big church to the same job at a smaller church. I mean, is that a bad career move? Is he running away from something? There was something rotten in Denmark, and it smelled like an opportunity for me. Now, as luck would have it, one of my uncles and his family lived lived in that same small town, although none of my family attended Mr. Charming's former church. So I called one of my cousins, told her my story, and enlisted her as a co-conspirator. We'll call her Anne. Anne is not her real name. The next Sunday morning, Anne and I attended Sunday school and morning worship at Mr. Charming's old church. Although Anne had never been a member of that church, it was a small town where everybody knew everyone, so she knew most of the people there. She started asking about Mr. Charming, and we got an earful. Every one of her friends said that Mr. Charming was a world-class creep. He would flirt with and even make suggestive comments to all the girls in the youth group, even those in junior high. Mind you, this guy was 40 plus years old. He had a wife and 3 children of his own. And then there was the touching. Never anything obvious or illegal, but he loved to put his hands all over the young ladies, whenever their parents weren't around, of course. But just like at the former church, the adults loved him because he kept the youth in line. Our investigation went on for several weeks. I kept a low profile as to not arouse any suspicion. Mostly, I just stood around, ate donuts, drank coffee, and talked about football. Anne did most of the work because she knew so many people, and it was perfectly natural for her to attend this church in her hometown, even if it was not the church she usually attended. After church was over, we would go to her house, have a delicious Sunday lunch cooked by my aunt, and then write down everything we had learned. By then, Anne's whole family were in on my investigation. They were as angry as I was about the way I had been treated, and our weekly report made interesting lunchtime conversations. Within a few weeks, I was sure that all I had to do was drive a few of these young ladies and their parents and friends and uncles down to my old church and let them tell their stories to the parents of a few girls in the youth group, and Mr. Charming would become Mr. Unemployed. But it kept getting better and better, so Anne and I just kept digging, and I really wanted to keep a low profile if I could, because I didn't want to upset the pastor any more than I already had. He knew a lot of people in the denomination, and he could easily ruin my ministerial career before it even started. Finally, after a month or so, Anne grabbed me by the sleeve and said, "You've got to hear this." She introduced me to a very well-dressed, very large guy, maybe 30 to 35 years old. I'll call him Fred. We slipped off into a Sunday school room where we could not be overheard. It turned out that Mr. Charming had had a multi-year affair with Fred's wife. Fred had kept his cool when he found out, talked with a lawyer, and had spent months gathering evidence. Text messages, voicemails, emails, even photos and videos with Fred's wife and Mr. Charming in them. And let's just say these videos are something of Mr. Charming's own makings. Now finally, Fred confronted his wife. She denied everything, but the evidence was just too much. Fred told her that he wanted a divorce, full custody of the children, their house, his retirement money, his business, her engagement and wedding rings, everything. Even the dog. She hired a lawyer, but laws and courts being what they are in this Bible Belt county, her lawyer told her that if the judge saw the videos, she would be lucky if she ended up in a homeless shelter with all of her worldly possessions under her bunk in a garbage sack. Then Fred turned his attention to Mr. Charming. Fred still sincerely loved his wife, and he was convinced that Mr. Charming had deliberately ruined his marriage. He took Mr. Charming to court and sued him for loss of consortium, and otherwise making him legally miserable would just take too long. And this all happened in the rural Deep South. Many people around here prefer a more direct approach. In the rural counties, the police and any jury of your peers will probably include people who have known you since kindergarten. So if you have a good reason for your actions and you aren't too stupid about it, there are things that you can do. So Fred scheduled an appointment with Mr. Charming in his church office, who did not suspect a thing because Fred was a deacon and his children were in the church youth group. Remember that I said Fred's a big guy? He is 6'6", weighs about 300 pounds, and if there was an inch of fat on him, he hit it really well. He looked like the kind of guy who could pull up a 100-foot oak tree by the roots without even breaking a sweat. Fred told me that he brought several friends with him, and of course he brought the videos. One friend blocked the door, and another unplugged the phone. A third one stood behind Mr. Charming and encouraged him to stay seated in his chair. Fred made Mr. Charming watch about 10 minutes of one of the videos. Then he said calmly to him, "I'm gonna stand here and watch you pack up your stuff, then you're gonna walk out of this building and never show yourself in this town ever again, or I will be back." And when that happened, Mr. Charming did as he was told. A month later, he had a new job at another church, which was my old church, and started ruining another whole set of lives, including mine. Now, Fred actually did not know where Mr. Charming had gone. He had been led to believe that Mr. Charming had moved out of state. He was surprised surprised, gratified, and angered to learn that this scumbag was only 50 miles away. This had all happened just a few months before. Fred was still deeply in love with his wife. They were getting counseling, and he hoped that they could save his marriage. But his hatred of Mr. Charming was still powerful and has been reignited by my telling him that Mr. Charming was living and working less than an hour away from his wife. And we're talking like Mount St. Helens a few minutes away before the explosion. He presented such a face of restrained rage and vindictiveness that it honestly scared me, and I wasn't even the one that he was mad at. So the next day, being a Monday, I drove back up there and gave him a copy of the directory of my old church. It had home addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses, pretty much for every member of the church. I showed him the pages that listed all of the deacons and other church leaders, and I marked some of the church's major financial donors. I explained my situation with the pastor and asked that my name not be mentioned, to which Fred said, "Oh, that's no problem." Now, the next Sunday comes around, and I could not resist visiting my old church just to see how things were going. And you know what? Mr. Charming was nowhere to be seen, nor was any explanation given about what had happened to him. One weird thing, though, is that the pastor looked absolutely terrified. His voice, usually resonant, loud, and almost musically baritone, trembled during the entire sermon. I slipped in just before the service started and made it a point to sit in the front row of the center pew. The look on his face when he saw me was worth all of my trouble. I didn't know it at the time, but Fred had gotten right to work and done a very thorough job. The whole church had gotten multiple anonymous emails with photos and videos of Mr. Charming and Fred's wife, and this is all in various, well, compromising positions and states of undress, if you know what I mean. Deacons and major donors got emails, plus express mail packages just for good measure. Mr. Charming and the pastor had been left out. They didn't know anything until the phone calls started pouring in. After the worship service, it did not take long for my church friends to figure out why I was there. It was very gratifying. Now, I was something of a hero, although I kept swearing that I had no idea what they were talking about. Things continued to blow up in my former church for months afterwards. Both the pastor and the pastor of Mr. Charming's old church all almost lost their jobs, and that's because they had lied to my old church's committee of deacons, who had recommended hiring Mr. Charming in the first place. And they also left out the details of why Mr. Charming had left his old job. But somehow they all managed to stay in the pulpits at their churches, although a lot of church members left my former church, which caused some financial problems. Now, there was talk of legal action possibly being made towards the person that sent these pictures and videos, but nobody ever was able to prove that Fred did it. I don't think they tried very hard either. After all, his wife was in the photos and the videos. Both churches really did not want this to become a court case, so overall they just kind of kept quiet about it. I never saw the old pastor ever again. I had lost all the love, trust, and respect that I had in him, and I was sure that he had figured out that I was somehow connected to the whole fiasco. So my chances of having any kind of preaching career in my denomination were precisely zero. By that time, being a pastor like the pastor I used to look up to was the last thing I wanted anyways. I withdrew my application to minister school and eventually completed a doctorate in archaeology at a different grad school. I graduated with honors, and it was at a large, widely respected state university. I've been teaching at a large public university in the Midwest of the United States with summer jobs on archaeological digs in Europe. And honestly, with all things considered, I am so very happy. I had no idea what happened to Mr. Charming after he left my former church, but it didn't matter because I moved to a new, happier, and more meaningful and more enlightened life. Fast forward, and I had one last gratifying event towards this situation. About 6 or 7 years later, I went to pick up a friend at a large downtown urban bus station in the US. Everyone hates this place because not only is it crowded, it is also poorly maintained and filthy. It smells like spoiled garbage mixed with diesel exhaust, and it has seldomly clean public bathrooms. My friend's bus was late, so I stopped by the newsstand to get myself a soda and some candy bar. And who do you think I see was restocking the shelves? That's right, it was Mr. Charming itself. I just sat across from the newsstand and enjoyed my drink and snack. He immediately recognized me and then turned away, but I just sat there and watched him, restocking shelves full of dirty magazines and junk food. And honestly, revenge is a feast that is best enjoyed cold. Yeah, that Mr. Charming guy sounds awful. This guy literally tried to tank your career. He took things away from you that made you happy, you know, stuff that like helped you feel fulfilled in life, and he gave it away to his family so that they could make a quick buck. You weren't getting paid to do all the stuff you were doing at that church, but that guy wanted to take it away from you just to try and make a quick buck for his family members, not to mention the horrible rumors that he spread about you. And honestly, with all things considered, I don't blame you for getting back at Mr. Charming. That guy has a checkered past, and if he didn't want that to be found out, then he shouldn't have come into that new church and basically try to ruin your life. Like seriously, that's his own fault, because at the end of the day, he would probably still be working there if he just played nice and treated people with respect. But instead, he had to run his mouth and try and ruin another group of people, just like he did at his former church. And honestly, with all that in mind and all the awful things he did, he absolutely had exactly what was coming to him. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I made a heart-wrenching mistake 6 years ago by breaking up with the perfect guy, and now I can't find peace at all, and I honestly don't know what to do. So I want to start off by saying that this is a painful memory for me to recount, so bear with me, and I hope some of you can offer insight or advice on how to find peace. A few years ago, from when I was 27 to 29, I was in a loving relationship with a genuinely amazing man. He was the kind of person that lit up the room, always happy, genuinely caring, considerate and playful, sometimes even humorously obtuse, but I always felt happy around him and laughed a lot. Beyond that, he was smart, handsome, and truly dedicated to those he loved. We had an awesome life together for those 2 years. He had a young daughter by the name of Sarah. Sarah is not her real name, and she was around 7 when I met her. She's now 13, and Sarah is from a previous relationship. When he introduced me to her after 5 beautiful months together, our connection was immediate. Sarah was a bright, bubbly girl with a heart of gold. I usually never liked or bonded with kids, but there was something about her spirit. So curious, funny, and mischievous, and very cute. Over time, she began to see me as a maternal figure, especially since her own mother was often too engrossed in her own work to spend any kind of time with her. And also, she found her mom quite serious and very strict. To me, it felt like they never truly bonded. Our little trio had many adventures together. We went on weekend getaways, explored museums, visited parks, and spent countless hours building memories. Yet, beneath the surface, I was battling my own demons, a depression I couldn't understand, and feelings of inadequacy fueled by the glossy lives I saw on social media. I never told him what I felt. Truthfully, I didn't feel depressed when I was with him. It was when I went back to my New York life I felt it, and I thought it would go away. I was also working in a glamorous corporate job in New York, while he lived a bit out in the suburbs, living a fairly unglamorous life as a data analyst in a small office company. I was making a bit more money than him, despite him being 7 years older than me. The feelings of unsatisfaction never left, and I started going to therapy. Through my therapist, I figured out that I needed to understand myself and my needs way more, and if I didn't, I would never get rid of this feeling. She encouraged and supported my decision that I needed to be on my own and live on my own terms. And possibly the pressure of being a stepmom was simply too soon for me, especially since all my friends in New York were living glamorous lives with a lot of activity involving their nightlife. Basically, I had a major fear of missing out, and I needed to experience it. So I broke up with him 3 or 4 weeks before my birthday in 2019. The sight of his broken heart and tears was heart-wrenching. He said some words with the saddest tone ever that's never left me. I remember him saying, "God, I really truly felt like I had everything in my life when I was with you. You don't know how happy you've made me and my daughter. We talk about you all the time." But what really tore me apart was when he revealed that Sarah had been saving half of her allowance for months just to surprise me with concert tickets to see my favorite band. We parted ways after a really painful weekend in September of 2019. I took the entire week off without telling him because I felt so broken. I insisted we maintain no contact. However, we both did a couple brief check-ins during the pandemic. To this day, the gravity of my mistake weighs heavily on my heart. He's found happiness with someone else now, a beautiful and really smart girl who's also my age. While I'm really glad for him, I'm constantly haunted by the hurt I caused them both. I miss him and his daughter so much, and often I dream of them. I miss the family time we had, the hugs when all 3 of us would cuddle under a blanket and watch a movie, or going out for drives, playing road trip games, or me confusing Sarah with obvious false facts and then slowly seeing her figure out that I was joking. I mean, God, it was so adorable. I wanted so badly to have a baby with him too. I was so stupid back then. And now the new lady gets to enjoy the life I could have had, and it's honestly my own fault. I went down a spiral during lockdowns, and even afterwards, I just dated around casually, filling the void with useless relationships. I haven't really bonded with anyone else. I'm in a situationship that probably will be ending given our recent talks and fights. I have restarted therapy, which is helping, but at the same time, it changes nothing. Part of me really wants to reach out to him and apologize and say how much I regret it and how much I miss them. I so badly want to see them again too. On 3 separate occasions, I have taken an Uber to pass by their house just to see if I could get a glimpse of them, but so far I haven't. Part of me hopes that he will say that he misses me too, and that he'll break up with his current girlfriend for me, but I doubt that he would ever do that. I've been stalking her a bit on social media. She has a great career, she's got a nice smile, she's far better looking than I ever was, and from some of the videos I watched, she seems cute and good-natured. I'm looking for advice on how to come to terms with my past mistakes. How can I find forgiveness and ensure I never let my internal struggles harm someone else ever again? And should I even reach out to apologize in the first place? What should I do? Okay, first off, I think you need to pump the brakes. You broke up with him, and yeah, it was a mistake, but you need to respect that he has moved on and gone in a different direction in his life. You broke this guy's heart. Absolutely, that is definitely the fact of the situation. They really loved you and they probably never saw this coming. So while I don't think it's a bad idea to maybe reach out and apologize for breaking his heart, on the other hand, getting your hopes up that he would somehow break up with his current girlfriend just to try and get with you is, in my opinion, really not okay. I personally find that to be incredibly unhealthy, and you're only setting yourself up for failure. Like, first off, it's really creepy that you're stalking this new lady, as well as driving by their house slowly just to try and catch a glimpse of something that you don't have in your life. That is really weird, and you definitely need to stop that. But also, looking at the core of the matter, I really don't think he's gonna break up with his current girlfriend just to get back with you. That's really weird, and I just don't see that happening. So honestly, I hope you're able to get through this in a reasonable way, because the way you're approaching this at the moment really does not seem healthy, and I really think you're only going to be setting yourself up for failure. My family was deceived by their landlords, who promised them that after they built a fence for them, they would then sell the house they were renting from these landlords. And after this betrayal and my family getting evicted, I decided to get revenge, costing them thousands of dollars in the process, as well as a lot of heartache, simply because they decided to mess with my family. Here's what happened. So to start things out, this story happened quite some time ago. I have never tried to seek out revenge before, but the way these people treated me and my family was utterly repulsive. And so here we have my first ever revenge story. First though, let's have some setup. My family lived in a house that was owned by, according to one of my family members, benevolent landlords. After they had lived there for 2 years on lease, the lease expired, and so they started living there on a month-to-month basis. My family member by the name of Mary and John, those are not their real name, suggested that they renew their lease, but Mary, being convinced that they had established a relationship of trust with the landlords, insisted that there was no need to do so. And this was definitely the first mistake. Sometime after, there was a storm that knocked over a relatively flimsy chain link fence that was built around the house. Now, because Mary and John kept important things in their yard, they needed a fence. The landlords were looking around for contractors to rebuild the fence, but John had an idea that he felt would be beneficial for everybody. You see, John and Mary really loved this house, and they were hoping to someday buy it off the landlords. And that's something that the landlords had suggested as a possibility from time to time. John suggested that he build the fence instead. He would only charge for the materials required, and he would provide the labor at no cost, all under one condition. The landlords must promise that they have no intention of selling the house. One landlord, we'll call him Benny, not only promised John that the house wouldn't be sold anytime soon, but even went as far as saying that they would only ever consider selling the house to John and Mary. And so a deal was made. John would rebuild the fence more beautiful than it had ever been in its entire lifespan, and Benny and the other landlord would ensure that John and Mary would get to keep living in that house, as well as enjoying the fruits of their labor all the way until the landlords finally decided to sell the house to them. John and Benny agreed upon what the dimensions and material of the fence would be. They decided wood, and they decided on the fence being fairly tall. John bought the materials and Benny paid John for the expenses. Halfway through building the fence, John asked Benny about whether he wanted certain changes in the backyard that would, alongside the fence, only serve to make the land value skyrocket. Now, when Benny heard this, he said that he would love those changes. But honestly, this was all too good to be true, because the way these landlords treated my family absolutely justified my revenge. Now, this next part is important. John looked Benny in the eye and said in no unclear terms, "If you have any intention of selling this house to someone other than us, tell me now and I will stop this entire project. I'm only interested in building this under the condition that I will be the one to get to enjoy it." Benny responded equally clearly, "You and your family will get to enjoy this home indefinitely. Feel at ease and do whatever you want with this yard." And so the fence was finished, and it was beautiful. And this is the part where I come in. I come to visit my family, and I help them finish this fence, as well as clean up the yard. I wasn't particularly happy about the terms of this agreement, but there was nothing that could be done now. But unfortunately, this is the part where my family gets screwed over, and badly at that. Not so much as a week after the fence was built, Mary gets a call from the other landlord. Let's call her Jane. Jane tells Mary that something unexpected has occurred. You see, her niece is currently on the market for a house, and she really wanted to see this particular house. Mary, who can feel herself getting riled up, asks Jane how this could be happening. The fence is only just finished and they're now considering selling the house. Jane assures Mary that her niece will most likely not want the house, but that she had to let her see it. Now, I'm not sure about the details about what happened shortly after, but it seems that Jane's niece didn't like the given price of the house, which was now more valuable than it was before, and so she chose not to buy it. Now, it might seem like they're out scot-free, but honestly, this is only the beginning. Benny came to visit John and Mary with something they had always wanted. Suddenly, the landlords wanted to sell, and an offer was made to my family. Now, my family is not wealthy, and they would have preferred if they had been told well in advance of the intention to sell. Nonetheless, the offer that was presented was not unfair, and my family said yes, which was excellent. But as soon as my family was approved to purchase the house, Benny came back with a change. The landlords no longer wanted to sell the house at the original price. Instead, the price they had in mind had now skyrocketed to roughly the same price as the most expensive house in the area, a price that John and Mary could no longer afford, and certainly more than the house was actually worth. That's not the worst of it though. Suddenly, the landlords needed to sell the house immediately. John said to Benny, "I thought we had a deal," but Benny responded that they suddenly needed the money because of some family members' needs. Later on, the story changed to them no longer needing the money, and then it was Jane who needed the money because of some other piece of completely fabricated garbage. The point being is that they wanted to sell the house now just so they could line their pockets, but they could never stick to a single excuse. Again, John told Benny that they had a deal, and Benny's response was, "I don't remember that. We never got anything in writing, and so we never had a deal." Jane later told me, "A verbal agreement doesn't mean anything." Now, unfortunately, in the eyes of the law, nothing could be proven. We couldn't force them to sell the house to my family at the original price, and we couldn't force them to let my family keep living there. Okay, thought my family, if that's the case, then we want to get paid for the labor we put into the fence. This was not ideal, since they now needed to leave the home they lived in for quite some time, but they knew it wasn't theirs, and they weren't going to put up a fight over it. At this point, they just wanted to get paid for their labor. But you know what? Benny and Jane didn't want to pay. My family members needed that money. Given that they were kicked out on such short notice, the money was needed in order to find a new place to live. Benny and Jane, however, insisted that they had always been fair with the rent, and they simply didn't owe my family legally. I told Benny and Jane that we would just take things to court and have a judge decide the result. Given the fear of a court case, Benny and Jane decided that they would pay my family, but the labor for this gargantuan monstrosity of a beautiful fence just wasn't worth that much more than the materials it was made of. The labor couldn't possibly be that much, they reasoned. Also, they would only pay for the labor for the fence, not for the rest of the work that they had done to the yard. Well, everyone decided to get an estimate. The average we got was $3,000 for labor, with Benny and Jane managing to get one estimate from one of their family members at $350. And that's just an absolute joke. The day to leave arrived, and Benny and Jane paid my family far less than what the labor was actually worth, and eventually my family left. We lost so much because of that. The effort that went into building this fence with the intention of getting to enjoy having it, and under the agreement that they would keep living there, just to then have it all taken away, and to barely even get paid for the labor. I mean, to get this kind of garbage was just all awful. And you know what? To me, that was unacceptable. We simply couldn't win anymore. But I also didn't want them to win either. So this is when I decided to get some revenge. I read up on fences. I learned far too much about what was and wasn't allowed when it came to fences, and I memorized every single rule. I learned when permits were and were not needed. I learned what the allowed dimensions were. I learned about whether fences needed finish. And oh boy, the things I learned about fences. I learned that you don't need a permit if your fence gets damaged, so long as you're rebuilding the same fence. But this was wood and the old one was chain link. I also learned that the fence needed to be painted, but this one that they built was not. Also, the fence had a very specific height limit, one which this new fence absolutely violated. These people were so happy to stick to the letter of the law when it came to screwing over my family, so I decided that I too would also stick to the letter of the law. Fast forward, and somehow the county found out that this fence was permitless, unpainted, and far too tall. Shortly after the county found this out, Benny and Jane got a visit from the county right before they managed to sell the house, and this is all at their obscene price. And would you know it, their fence was built illegally. Now, sometimes you could just get a permit after the fact, but their fence wasn't allowed to be built in the way that it was. There were no plans, no inspection, nor anything else that the county required. It simply had to come down. My family then got a very angry call. The landlords accused my family of never getting a permit, something that my family literally could not do, given that this was not their property in the first place. Besides, it was the landlords who assumed no permit was needed, and my family knew nothing about how permits worked, so the fence had to be torn down. There goes the money they saved by not paying my family, and they lost their prospective buyer. There goes the money they wanted to make, and the land value of the house absolutely went down. Their price point that they wanted to sell the house at was gone, and they needed to build a new fence, since no one will want to live in this house without some sort of fencing. So now it looks like they'll have to pay for an actual new fence, which includes labor and everything else from an actual contractor. So at the end of the day, we didn't win. But you know what? Neither did these people. And honestly, with all things considered, I will take that revenge any day of the week. Wow, that is honestly so infuriating. Can you imagine building that fence under the false promise that not only will you still be able to live there, but also they're going to try and sell the house to you at the end of it? I mean, Benny and Jane are absolute scumbags in this story. They're the worst kind of people on planet Earth. They went back on their promises and they really pulled a fast one on this family. So good for the original poster for getting revenge. These landlords absolutely had it coming. And if they were simply honest in their dealings, none of this would have happened in the first place. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for reporting my neighbor's son to the police after he repeatedly trespasses onto my property? Here's what happened. So I live in England. I own my home and I understand I am fortunate, but I also worked hard for it. Any money I received or earned while working part-time till graduation all went straight into my savings account. Most people on my street are social housing tenants. I'm still determining what that is, but they've explained that you're eligible for the scheme if you are on a low income. It's more secure than the private sector, as you mostly get assured tenancies, even though there are different tenancy types. Now, for a while, I got along well with my next door neighbors. We'll call them Emily and Ben. They also have 3 kids who are 13, 9 years old, and 4 years old. But soon enough, I started experiencing a lot of problems from next door. I work from home often, and I could hear shouting next door constantly. Ben is 5'11", and he's quite loud and intimidating, and I could hear the kids screaming and crying. I had asked them to lower their voices daily, and I even explained that I work from home. The next set of problems revolved around the 13-year-old son. I spotted their son climbing over a wall to get into my garden just to get his football back, and honestly, at first I ignored it, but then it happened 10 times in a row. I finally decided to speak with his parents, and I can't remember what was said entirely, but still, all I said to them was basically, I want to talk to you about your son trespassing literally 10 times in my garden. I would appreciate it if you would have him stop doing that, and if he instead would just come to the front and knock on the front door, I could then happily collect his ball for him. The neighbors apologized and said they would make sure their son doesn't do it and would knock instead. But a few days later, their son did it again while I was in my lounge. I walked into my garden, which made him jump, and spoke with him. I told him that I had seen him trespass to collect his ball on various occasions. I told him I had talked to his parents and that trespassing is a crime, and I would appreciate it if he could just come to the front of the house and knock on my door in the future. Well, he didn't say anything and just went back into his garden. I informed his parents and they apologized, but it still continued. I eventually got fed up with it and decided to invest in CCTV finally. I wrote a letter to residents on my road to give them a week's notice that private security footage is being installed at my address, and it will cover my entire garden and it will also cover my doorway. I also wrote that I'm getting a Ring doorbell camera as well. After installing the cameras, I thought it would stop the kids from trespassing, but unfortunately it absolutely continued. I saved the footage, I filed a police report against the son for trespassing, and I sent all of the evidence to the police. I knew there was a strong chance that nothing was going to happen, but I just wanted the son to have some responsibility. When my neighbors found out, they were so mad with me, and since then, our relationship has soured. My siblings found out about this and think that I'm a total jerk about this. So honestly, am I the jerk for reporting this kid to the police after I gave him and his parents so many times to correct this behavior? What should I do? I don't think you're the jerk at all. This kid was definitely trespassing on your property just to get a ball that he clearly is kicking into your yard on purpose. Like seriously, he can't just keep it in his own yard? Why is he constantly kicking it in your yard? Like that's unfair and that's really annoying. And what if this kid breaks something or worse, gets injured? I bet those parents would blame you immediately for any injury their son gets. So seriously, I would have done the exact same thing. I would have set up cameras and absolutely done the same thing. Because the parents are clearly not doing anything to fix this. They're saying, oh, I'm sorry, but they're not correcting their son. Like, come on. Your apologies does nothing. This kid is still breaking into my backyard to get something he can clearly have me get instead. So overall, you are not the jerk. I would not feel bad about this in the slightest. And honestly, there's nobody to blame about this situation other than your neighbors and their entitled son. Am I the jerk for telling my sister that she can't force our family to pretend like we like her daughter's name, especially when she named her daughter after my former bully? Here's what happened. So my sister gave birth to her first child 2 months ago and named her Olivia. The name Olivia has a bit of history with our family. To make a long story short, I was bullied by a girl named Olivia for years. My parents had to move out of our local small school into a bigger one, and it did not stop there. What started as an 8-year-old being mean and cruel at times turned into a 16-year-old being arrested for bothering me and making my life an absolute nightmare, and going so far that she was considered a stalker. It was so bad that from the ages of 12 to 16, I did not leave home without one of my parents or one of my older brothers, who were several years older than me. It was also so bad that my parents had to call the police on a few occasions where Olivia followed me home and was outside our house trying to get to me. To say that this was a huge ordeal for all of us is an understatement, and to say it left me with some mental scarring would be an even larger understatement. So when my sister announced that her daughter's name was Olivia, it was honestly a shock. My mom asked her if she was serious, and my sister grew defensive and said, "Of course I'm serious." She said that Olivia is the most popular name right now, and for good reason, because she thinks it's beautiful. My brothers told her that she was insensitive and that they had no idea she cared so little about me, which honestly only added to the defensiveness. My dad didn't say a lot, but he told her that it would take some time for all of us to adjust to the name. But she did not like that. I actually didn't say anything, but she started ranting and raving about how many people are named Olivia, and we're not treating or acting like that about them in the slightest. I wasn't there for the whole thing, but my mom and oldest brother apparently told her that she had every right to name her child whatever they wanted, but that they felt they were being very unfair to me, and that she had to understand that what I had been through was something that they would never fully grasp. My mom said that she is an adult, and she is old enough to accept that people have feelings, and sometimes those feelings will matter more than other feelings. Eventually, my sister contacted me directly after a few weeks of our family not coming around. She said it was all my fault, and that I should have been the one to say something positive about the name, and that I could have turned the tide with the family. I told her that was a name tied up with a lot of trauma for me. She called it absolute garbage and said that I'm old enough now to be mature about it and not take it out on her and her daughter. She wanted me to not hate a name because of a single person, but I also told her that she's old enough to understand that she can't force our family to pretend we like her daughter's name. I told her she is old enough to give us the time that was asked for, and that none of us said it was ugly or awful, but it quite literally is associated with some of my worst memories. She told me we we were trying to influence what she could and couldn't name her daughter, and it made us complete jerks, especially me. So honestly, am I the jerk for telling my sister that she can't force our family to like her daughter's name, despite the fact that she named her daughter after my former bully? What should I do? Your sister is being a big jerk. She could name her daughter any number of names. She could go through a litany of other popular names and dodge the one name that's associated with a bully who made your life a living nightmare. I would never do that to a sibling. Your sister is being selfish and absolutely obnoxious, and there's no reason for her to be treating you that way. This honestly does kind of feel targeted in some ways. Like she's like, oh, I'm gonna name my daughter Olivia, and she knew for a fact that Olivia is the name of the person who made your life a living nightmare. Like, that is so inconsiderate, and honestly, it really does make a difference. So sure, you'll love the child no matter what. It's not like we're not gonna like the child when it's born, but the name itself definitely takes time to get used to and not associate with the person who made your life a nightmare. So in my opinion, I don't think you're the jerk. I don't think you've done anything wrong, and I think your sister is really being incredibly inconsiderate. This next story came from the Am I the Jerk subreddit. Check the links in the description and go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for having anger towards my best friend after he participated in cheating with my ex for nearly 2 months before we broke up? Here's what happened. So for some backstory, this story takes place about 5 years ago. My now former best friend and I would always be together hanging out with our mutual friend group. We'll call him Devin. Devin is not his real name. Somewhere around that time, I started talking to a girl by the name of Maria, also not her real name. We would often frequent the store she worked at a lot of that time. I always thought she was pretty cute. She had short red hair, glasses that were kind of nerdy, she played video games and was a huge Harry Potter fan, and loved to talk about it all the time, to which I always enjoyed listening to her talk about it. Now, here's where our story really begins. Sometime after I gathered the courage to talk to her, we both started dating, to which I was more happy than I had ever been in my life up to that point. She would be the one to bring me out of my shell more and more, spending whatever time we could get off work together, which I always was thankful for. We spent Christmas and everything together, which up until then I had never done before in my life. After a year, out of the blue, she messaged me and says, I've been thinking a lot lately. I don't know if I'm ready for a relationship yet. I don't know about a long distance relationship. For reference, we were a 30-minute drive from each other's houses, to which I guess that was understandable. So after a bit of back and forth, we agreed to split up. Within 24 hours of us breaking up, Devin, who I considered a brother who I lived with for a year and a half, I later found out they were at a bar to which some of our mutual friends saw them getting pretty close, if you know what I'm saying. They hid this from me for months till one day in the middle of playing some games, my close friend, who we'll call Toby, blurts out that Devin and my ex are together. I then looked at him confused and I was taken aback. I responded with a bit of a nervous chuckle by saying, what are you talking about? He then proceeds to fill me in on everything. The following confrontation went as follows. I said to Devin, hey Devin, random question for you, man. Did you hear anything about my ex seeing anyone lately? People are saying she's seeing a guy I know. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Well, like a deer caught in the headlights, he looks up at me and says, no, this is the first time I'm hearing about this. That's weird. I then looked at him and I said, all right, man, you're like a brother to me. I trust you. Of course, at that point, I lost all respect for him. I said to him, I've seen the messages. I know you've been seeing her. He then flips the switch on me by saying that she's a grown woman and she can see who she wants, which he was right about, and I honestly couldn't argue that. From that moment on, he made it his vendetta to turn me into the most horrible human being ever birthed. Our mutual friends proceeded to message me within a few days, asking me how I could do that to him and that I have no right to interfere with their love. From then on, I've been looked down with disgust and anger by all of my former friends who were like a second family to me. This anger over that has still not gone away, even all this time later. I have made peace with the fact that things have changed so much. Now, do I think I could have handled things differently and handled my anger better? Of course I do. But you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20 after all. Fast forward a bit, and I learned that after a night of celebrating his birthday, Devin, who is a loud drunk, began to tell everyone at his birthday bash that he had in fact been sleeping around with my ex for 2 months before she ended it with me, and he was laughing the entire time. So am I the jerk for holding on to the anger of having all my friends turned against me? I don't think you're the jerk here in the slightest. Your friend is awful, and all of these former friends are complicit for not saying anything to you. chances are they probably knew about this situation as well. They probably knew straight up that your ex was cheating on you with your best friend, and they decided to keep quiet about that. That is not a good friend in my opinion, and you do not need those types of people in your life. There's nothing wrong with holding on to the feelings that you have, and honestly, I don't blame you for being angry. I think eventually with time you'll learn to let it go, but right now with this all still ongoing, it's just simply so unfair, and you don't deserve this. So no, you're not the jerk for being angry. Your former friends and your former best friend and ex-girlfriend, they are absolutely the jerks in this situation, and that's something you absolutely need to remember. My entitled thieving jerk of a friend has been using me for friendship just so he can steal my games from my collection. So I decided to get some revenge by meticulously documenting how many games he owed me as well as several other kids on my street. And as a result, he was forced to pay back myself as well as all the other kids that he stole from just to avoid a very serious lawsuit. And I've never been more satisfied to put someone in their place in my life. Here's what happened. Okay, so first off, this story is going back a long way, but I was encouraged to put this up, so here we are. Back in my years at high school, during the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 era, I lived with my grandmother because it was closer to my school than my mother's, who at the time was self-employed and now is a successful SEO developer. I was not popular in school, but had a closely knit group of friends on my home street. Myself was included with 10 kids on the street. 6 of them were pairs of siblings across 7 houses. We all played games, we all completed games, but the amount of games we could get was very different. Now, being the kid with the most, I offered that if anyone wanted to have a go at a game at my house, I would let them. Now, I also have OCD, among other things thanks to a mental disorder. That meant I used an Excel spreadsheet to record what games I own, if they were bought brand new, as well as the price that they were bought at. And I had dealt with people misusing my friendship in school just to steal from me, with my grandma coming in to save the day. But my main hobby is games, so when I started going to high school, I started pen marking the inside of the game covers, and I would mark the white side of the cover that no one would see. This doesn't affect the resale value. I would also jot the mark down in a notebook with a reference to the game name while also noting if it was new or pre-owned. I would on occasion lend a game with the express direction that if you borrow it for more than 2 weeks, I would hound you to get it back. People rarely borrowed from me, since what they wanted to go on, they could do so at my house. Fast forward, and about at the age of 14, games would suddenly start going missing. Losing one was not new to me, but the frequency of games that went missing had increased, so I set out to have a test. I bought a second notebook and wrote down where each game should have been, editing it only if I moved it. And sure enough, my copy of Final Fantasy X was marked as lost, and it was at that point I realized the worst. One of my friends was absolutely using me and blatantly stealing my games. I knew if I asked anyone on the street about it, whoever was doing it would stop and would most likely never be caught. Fortunately, the ball was not rolling on certain things. While gaming magazines were certainly a thing, it still wasn't that big in my neck of the woods for anyone other than me to be using it, and I kept it that way by helping anyone on my street with information about video games. Bear in mind as well, the internet was not so readily used as it is now, and a PC did not mean internet access. A PC was just a workstation for schoolwork and PC games bought at a store. If you had internet, it either came with dial-up and was used by one person in the house, or you used the Sky Internet keyboard to search using your set-top box. Secondly, and most importantly, it was a 15-minute ride to town and a 2-hour drive to the nearest city, and the difference was that in town did not have a game station. The 2 places that sold and traded games in town had one policy: the game must come with a box, the disc, and the game manual. I spent an hour removing every manual I had from the games and storing them in a box under the bottom shelf of my set of drawers. That way, if someone really was stealing from me, they would not be profiting off of anything I have. Eventually, I could glean information from outside sources that the 3 sets of siblings on my street were innocent. The first group, who I will refer to as the sisters, their mother came and helped myself and my grandma clean my great-grandmother's house on Saturdays. I would ask what they're playing on, and if a game that went missing came up, I would ask them, "Oh, when did you start on that?" And I would do that for 2 reasons. For one, their mother was kind and I didn't want to upset her. And secondly, I wanted to avoid showing suspicion. However, it was responded with, "Oh, well, I bought them," or basically them saying that they bought it when they were in town. So I knew right away that the sisters were innocent. The second pair, I'll refer as the twins, got whatever they asked for within within reason from their parents, so there was no doubt that they were innocent. The third group, who are the brothers, had a younger brother who couldn't keep a secret, and I was very good friends with him. I helped him with his schoolwork, made up the difference if he couldn't quite afford a drink or a chocolate bar, while also making sure that I was an ear for him to talk to, and so much more. And also, I didn't trust the other brother beyond friendship, so if the older brother was playing anything that was missing, I would know, and I would know entirely how it happened. So again, they were innocent. That left 3 boys on my street of varying age, who I only know on a one-on-one basis. If I had suspects, it would be them. Over 2 years of maintaining the facade that I was blissfully unaware, I kept the helpful nature up enough that no one ever questioned my gaming source. And sure enough, games kept going missing, but I was looking for something. No manuals, no trade-ins, meaning no extra cash towards the latest games. I had actually been waiting for one of the games to go missing that people had seen me play and wanted to play. A game by the name of Vex, which is a game similar to Mario 64, but replace the stars with hearts, is the one I'm referring to. One of the hearts you could earn in the game had copy protection on it, meaning that the answer to that one was in the manual, and this was a common practice before the internet was really a major thing. And sure enough, a month after finishing, it went missing. A week later, a boy my age, who I will refer to as the thieving jerk, asked me how to open the chest in the whale. I said to him, "Oh, well, it's in the manual." The thieving jerk replied that he had no manual and that it was bought at a car boot sale. But after I heard that, in my mind, I had got him. His parents never went far in town, so he never went to the city to get any kind of games like that. And there had not been a car boot sale in nearly 4 months. So that's when I made my play. The thieving jerk went to karate practice on Tuesdays between 7 and 9, and I waited until 7:10 and went to his house with my grandma, with my notebooks, printouts of my records on game purchases, and a document. And I will get to that in just a moment. After a brief talk of disbelief, I asked if I could prove if their son was stealing. Now, with them thinking that I wouldn't find anything, they absolutely let me. I walked over to the copy of Vex that sat in the front room. I showed them the inside with no manual. I showed them my notebook and lifted the cover of the game box, showing a signed pen mark that I used next to the notebook with the same pen mark on the inside cover. While they were stunned, I took this opportunity to pick up a second and third, point to the pen mark in the book, and then move the label accordingly to show an identical copy. When the mother saw this, she went white. I asked if I could see if there were more in the house. Shocked, the father complied, and after 20 minutes, I had 30 plus games on the table in front of them, all with missing booklets, all with pen marks on the reverse of the label that matched the inside of the notebooks. But the best part about it, upstairs on his PC desk was a note detailing who had what. When I showed them the note, you could see the rage building in the father's eyes, while my grandma talked to the mother about what could happen next, with her basically threatening legal ramifications for thievery, and that now that this kid is 16 years old, he could be tried as an adult with the right judge. I decided to show the father where I found the note, and he found folders of the records of games owned by others, and when he had acquired them, and how much he had traded them in for. Yes, it wasn't just me. Over several years, he had been stealing games as far back as Mega Drive era, playing on them until he was done, and then trading them in as his own to pocket the cash. He had only started with me a few years back, when my grandma had allowed me to move consoles downstairs for friends to go on the condition that it was only when I had friends around and only one console at a time, with only the games we were going on to avoid making a mess. Going downstairs, I laid out the document I had saved until now. It was a document that myself, my grandmother, and my mother had laid out, detailing that I would not take the evidence I had to the police on the condition that every game wrongfully taken, and if in the event that this couldn't happen, then the full price of the game when I bought it would be returned to my grandmother within 6 months' time. That way, it could be returned to the rightful owners in one form or another. Now, when it comes to this document that was written up, I had to thank my mother here for the genius thought of wording it in such a way so that in the event I wasn't the only victim, everybody involved would find justice. Both parents looked at this document and signed it. I signed it and my grandmother signed it, and the 4 of us waited at that time. We talked over how we would handle this, agreeing that I would take the folders home and do the research on the retail price on any missing game. When the thieving jerk returned, the look on his face was priceless as he stared at the folders and piles of games. In the time, I had called my grandfather to help us carry the games and the notes down the street back to my house. Before before leaving, we informed the thieving jerk exactly what was going to happen, which was all much to his dismay. Now, his house is 4 doors down and across the small one-exit street. At the other end is a garden and a modern train line that runs through the town. From 9 till 10, I could hear the father yelling at his kid even as the 9:15 train went past, all while I was going through the records on my PC, scanning them in with a very basic scanner by today's standards, and it felt great, and I found it soothing as I combed through everything. That weekend, I printed off several copies of the agreement and documents listing what had been stolen from each of my friends or pairs of siblings, as well as how much they were worth and when to expect the money. I returned the folders and gave the parents a copy of the agreement with a value of how much he had stolen from all parties, as well as what could not be returned. They told me they would pay it and it would come out of the thieving jerk's savings and allowance, and this would be for the next 4 years. Both me and him were 16 at the time, and he would be in his first year of university before he paid his parents back, and unsurprisingly, the karate trips absolutely stopped. Once they had closed the door, I pulled several envelopes out of my bag and made the rounds on my streets. Every kid got one of these envelopes that held the information relevant to them and a copy of the agreement. To my surprise, it took 2 weeks for every penny to be given to my grandma, using the records I gave each of my friends with exactly how much they were owed in an envelope to avoid any prying eyes. Once that was done, I waited till the following Monday and handed a copy of the agreement to my school. Like most schools, mine had a system that duties would be delegated to the most trustworthy and well-behaved of the students that both me and the thieving jerk were on. The thieving jerk was removed from that list, and the staff knew that he was an absolute jerk. On my street, he was removed from the circle of friends, we wouldn't talk to him, and he wasn't welcome at street events, and most certainly not on any trips. In school, he wasn't even allowed on any field trips because his father wouldn't sign the permission slip. After that, I didn't change, and sure, we were one friend down, but none of my games went missing ever again. When I turned 18, I moved because of college to my mom's house, but I had only used up the money returned to me by then to buy a new Xbox 360 at the time. My mom keeps a framed copy of the signed agreement in the office, and I keep the original framed in my office to this day just to remind me. Unsurprisingly, after finishing high school, he and his parents moved away, as it was quite clear that the kids and parents alike wanted absolutely nothing to do with him. Seriously, the original poster is like Batman. Like, this gave off Death Note vibes of how detailed and organized you were. You say you have OCD, but honestly, that really saved your skin. This allowed you to have a detailed, organized list of what games you do and don't have. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You're passionate about games. It's fun for you. Like, why would you not want to be involved and have a good time? So it's really cool to see that you went through so much effort to try and get your games back. Because I totally get it. These are more than just sentimental things. This is something that's important to you and it means a lot. And it's much more than just a video game. This is a collection. This is something that you want to have a collection of and be able to look back with pride that you bought all this stuff and you can still play it to this day. But this thieving jerk was basically ruining that experience. He was taking your games and deciding, no, I want them for myself. And he was not only doing that to you, he was doing that to everybody on that street. And that is such awful behavior. There's no excuse for the way that kid acted. I mean, I'm even willing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. There's always that one dumb kid that steals a game, but then they either give it back and apologize, or they at least feel guilty as a normal human being and vow to never do that ever again because it's wrong. Like, kids are stupid. They're gonna do dumb things and they're gonna steal and do stuff that's stupid. But this kid is not someone you would classify as some dumb kid. He did this on purpose. He did this deliberately, and he used you to try and get to your collection. And that is so messed up. That is way worse than taking a game and feeling guilty about it later. I mean, this guy went about this with a purpose. He was gonna take your game and then he was gonna sell it off. But the original poster's plan of action to prevent that from ever happening was genius. Like, this kid was seriously so awesome. He not only had it all organized in a notebook, but he also had a document ready once he found the thieving jerk. This guy waited 2 years just to get this guy taken care of. Like, that's a whole different level of patience that I would never be able to deal with. So honestly, good for the original poster. If something ever goes missing of mine, I would love to give you a call, because you clearly know exactly how to get this going. And hopefully in whatever future career you have, you're able to use these detective skills to better the world around you. Because seriously, what you did was awesome. And that thieving jerk absolutely had it coming. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. A nasty homeowner tried to charge back on the services we provided, so my boss maliciously complied and refused to answer any of their phone calls just to get back at them for not paying them. Here's what happened. So when I was in college almost 20 years ago, I had a summer job working for a small builder. We were building a good-sized deck and installing some large boulders around it as landscaping. The guy driving the equipment used to move the boulders backed into the side of the house. A window and part of the wall was destroyed. The corner of the equipment was about a foot inside the living room. The guy we were working for explained everything to the homeowner and promised it would be fixed as soon as possible. He even put it in writing at the homeowner's request. Now, the homeowner was upset, but seemed pretty reasonable and understanding. We were there until 10 o'clock that night, building a temporary wall and covering it with plywood. The owner and the other guy went back the next day to make it look a little nicer. The plan was to order the window and siding and come back to do everything right once we had the supplies. The cost to repair the house was much more than we were paid for the entire deck and landscaping job. Now, the thing is, the homeowner had paid in full with a credit card at the start of the job, so he decided to do a chargeback, saying no goods or services were provided. My boss was angry. He had agreed to every extra thing the homeowner had asked for, which included replacing another unbroken window so they would match, replacing the carpet in the entire room even though it wasn't really damaged, repainting the entire room, a hallway, and 2 other rooms that were the same color so they would all match, as well as several other things. However, the next time the homeowner called for an update, the boss told him that he had received the chargeback, saying that no goods or services were provided by him, so it must have been some other company that did the work. So he told them to call the other company and stopped answering the homeowner's phone calls. I would like to imagine his malicious compliance worked and it just ended there, and that he got away with only the money lost from the chargeback and not the cost of fixing the house. I'm not sure how it ended, and the summer did end, and I went back to school after that, but I'm sure he fixed the house eventually. Honestly, that's really messed up. I mean, first off, they tried to make everything right. They tried to do exactly what they needed to do to put up a temporary wall to fix the stuff that broke when they had the accident. It wasn't on purpose, it's not like they did it maliciously, so the fact that they would act like that and then try and charge back all the money that they paid to have this done is, in my opinion, unbelievably toxic. I'm also really surprised that insurance of some kind, whether it's business or homeowners insurance, didn't kick in and cover all the costs to the house. Like, sure, you can put up a temporary wall just to help out, and yeah, it's gonna take a while to get things fixed and paid for, but at least you can start the process and get this all worked out. So hopefully some kind of communication was able to start, because I'm pretty sure what the homeowner did was theft, and they absolutely need to pay up, otherwise there's gonna be problems. My wife is an incorrigible slob who blames me for absolutely everything, and after 14 years of marriage, I'm emotionally numb and I've completely given up. Here's what happened. Honestly, where do I even begin? There are a lot of connected problems that add to this post, so I will do my best to be brief. My wife and I have been together for nearly 2 decades now, and we've been married for 14 years. Together, we have a 10-year-old son whom we both adore. She's a great mother to him, without question. However, since the beginning, my wife has been a total, complete slob and hoarder. Any chore she starts will get dropped halfway done and not picked up again for days at a time, if not weeks. Every flat surface of our home is covered in things that she can't be bothered to put away or even just get rid of. Her favorite chair never gets used since it's a collecting ground of things that she'll drop there. Her walk-in closet has a 6-inch layer of unused clothes carpeting it, and this is since we bought our home 6 years ago. I could go on, but I hope this gives you an idea of what I live in. Of course, this begs the question of my participation in the chores. Now, I'm no angel, and I have my own clutter here and there, but little more than an average lived-in home would. For comparison, once I cleaned off our kitchen table and made respective piles of my mess versus hers just to make a point, I filled a full-size garbage bag, and then some with what she had on the table. My mess was a shoebox of Warhammer figures, a book, and a mug. I cleaned too, but dealing with her mess is beyond daunting. I've totally gutted and cleaned rooms just to have her bury them within a week. The worst part about it all is the part that has killed me over the years. In her eyes, this is all my fault. These are my messes, despite her owning 99% of everything left around. She will reach past 20 things on a table that she put there that simply don't belong just to grab my one coffee mug mug and start grumbling about my mess and how she has to do everything. And usually this is in a passive-aggressive rant to one of our cats about how put upon she is. I mean, come on, she even wanted a deal where I would wash the laundry and she would fold it. I washed most every day, and the pile of unfolded clean laundry in the living room just grew and grew. A couple months of this and suddenly she says she's taking over washing from me because she's tired of her clothes getting wrinkled on the floor. So I get told I'm at fault for doing my half of a chore while she ignores hers. I just can't argue with her at all. She's gone completely delusional. So I'm just done. I don't care anymore. And I live in abject, numb misery. And this is all with the realization that she will never change, and I will always be her scapegoat. Is there any hope for us? Is there any way I can make her see sense? What should I do? Honestly, this is really embarrassing, and it's such a shame because it sounds like you're doing everything you can to try and make this work, but it really seems like your wife is being unreasonable. And that is not okay. Like, that is seriously messed up. She's clearly denying the fact that she causes most of the mess, while also simultaneously trying to blame it on you, as if you're the one that caused all of her mess. Like, it almost sounds like she needs some kind of intervention, but I honestly don't even know what that would look like. Maybe there's like some professional service that might be available, or maybe there's some kind of therapy that you can both go to try and work this out, but that's all contingent upon her actually wanting to have something done about this. So truly, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, and hopefully some kind of solution comes about from this, because the way she's acting is really inappropriate, and this is something that really needs to change as soon as possible. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.